hello, in English. English. I am talking in English. I'm doing this in English. Alright. Was meant to do this bit here. Alright. I'm doing it now. In Australia, Tesla, upala, Tesla. Full self driving FSD beta is not currently legal. Lawsuits. Okay, then can you just look for it? News Australia government. So the car can drive by itself. Tesla can drive it by itself, can it? Full self-drive. FSD.
In Australia, Tesla's full self-driving FSD beta is not currently legal. Lawsuit News Australia government, Google search. February 27, 2025, a class action has been lodged in the Federal Court of Australia against the US car maker, alleging issues with autopilot and Tesla vision systems. For now, Tesla owners in Australia could sue their government to allow FSD supervised. That will significantly increase the capabilities. February 26, 2025, claim alleges that problems with the car's braking system puts drivers in peril, while also taking issue with the company's range claims. Missing FSD beta government. Tesla's full self-driving beta supervised may be available in Australia very soon. This is massive news. February 25, 2025, Brisbane-based law firm J. Gass Sadler has filed a class action against Tesla, alleging that Australian drivers have been put at risk by the Tesla Autopilot and Enhanced Autopilot are both legal in Australia, but Tesla's full self-driving mode is not. While you can buy cars that July 1, 2024, as it stands today, Tesla Autopilot and Enhanced Autopilot modes are legal in Australia and available to local Tesla owners, but the more. February 26, 2025, Australian owners have accused Elon Musk's Tesla of overstating its electric car's battery life and self-driving capabilities in a class action lawsuit. Missing beta government. As it stands today, Tesla Autopilot and Enhanced Autopilot are legal in Australia and available to local Tesla owners, but the Tesla Full Self-Driving, FSD. February 24, 2025, Australian owners have accused Elon Musk's Tesla of overstating its electric car's battery life and self-driving capabilities in a class action lawsuit. Tesla full self-driving is a bad thing for getting public buy-in for autonomous driving tech, rival engineer says. News. Tesla full self-driving is a bad thing for getting public buy-in for autonomous driving tech, rival engineer says. If some car makers promise too much too soon, it could seriously damage people's trust in the technology. According to the Mercedes-Benz head of autonomous driving, companies such as Tesla spiking its full self-driving program are promising too much and risk putting punters off autonomous driving technology. According to Mercedes-Benz. Speaking to Drive Eat, the German car brand's Intelligent Drive Insight event in Melbourne this week, Jochen Hobb, the head of Mercedes-Benz's autonomous driving program, said it was a case of needing to run before you can walk. Rolling out autonomous capabilities should be a step-by-step approach. Do it slowly, but do it the right way. Build trust, build confidence, he told us. We're concerned about others, let's say, promising too much. That's not the way we approach things. The problem is, if things are overpromised or do underperform, even if it's very seldom, the entire trust in autonomous driving itself loses confidence. And that's a bad thing. The research, which surveyed 562 people about their feelings towards self-driving vehicles, found 53% saying they were not in favor or unsure, while the remaining 47% said they liked the idea of such technology, but just as a travel option. Around 3/4 still felt that humans should be able to control the vehicle themselves if need be. The basic Tesla autopilot comes standard with all new Teslas in Australia, offering features such as traffic-aware adaptive cruise control and auto steer. Tesla Enhanced Autopilot is an optional extra, which for highway driving adds auto lane change and navigate on autopilot, as well as auto park. Summon and Smart Summon, which can drive short distances to you with no one behind the wheel. While Tesla Full Self-Driving (FSD) beta hardware is installed in all new models locally, and the car maker will take your money today, you can't use it yet. When Tesla releases FSD beta locally, it will be enabled via a software update. FSD beta can identify stop signs and traffic lights, automatically slowing your vehicle to a stop on approach. There are also plans to add auto steer on city streets. Even then, Tesla insists that FSD does not make the vehicle autonomous and requires a fully attentive driver who is ready to take immediate action at all times. However, Tesla autonomous vehicle technology has come under fire in recent years, particularly in the US, due to an increasing number of accidents occurring while its vehicles were said to be in autopilot. As previously reported, Tesla's semi-autonomous driving technology was attributed to at least 17 fatalities in the US between 2019 and 2023. Mr. Riyadh was sitting behind the steering wheel of a Tesla Model S sedan operating the electric car's advanced driving system, marketed by Tesla as autopilot. Even though it is only semi-autonomous when it exited a freeway and ran a red light in southeast Los Angeles. The Tesla crashed into a stationary Honda Civic at 119 kilometers per hour, killing the two occupants of the Honda. Currently, Mr. Haab and his team, based just south of Stuttgart, are working on rolling out Level 3 autonomous driving technology globally through Mercedes Drive Pilot software, which was first introduced in Germany as an optional extra on its Class and X models in May 2022. Level 3 means conditional automation under certain conditions. The car can be in control, rather than the human being, up to 60 kilometers per hour, but only on a freeway end. The driver must be able to take back control within 10 seconds. This also exceeds the current capabilities of Tesla Full Self-Driving, which will be expanded as regulations permit. Level 3 autonomy was greenlit in the U.S. states of California and Nevada in 2023, with Mercedes hoping to increase the speed permitted to 90 km per hour later this year, and 130 km per hour by the end of the decade, but only if testing shows it is safe to do so, with no large leaps being made before it has been proven to be ready. We deal with the risk and then we take the step. We do field validation, we act as if we were the customers, he told Drive. We do up to 1 million kilometers with a new system before we give it to the customer. We don't have beta testers on the road from outside of our company. We have beta testers and their Mercedes employees, and only in the late stage, they're not even developers in the early stages, they're trained drivers, then they're skilled engineers or testing drivers. And then, eventually as it mature, we even have factory workers, cooks, security. It's an incentive program actually, but we have measuring devices in the car so we always know what's going on. In Australia, the federal government is developing a new automated vehicle safety law to unlock the mainstream use of autonomous vehicles on Australian roads. While limited trials of driverless vehicles have already been conducted locally, the upcoming legislation, covering Level 3 and above, is set to focus on managing the safe operation of autonomous cars on a broader scale. The framework is expected to commence in 2026-27, following a public consultation which closed earlier this month. 6 images. A born and bred newshound, Catherine has worked her way up through the ranks, reporting for, and later editing, 2 renowned UK regional newspapers and websites, before moving on to join the digital news desk of one of the world's most popular newspapers, The Sun. More recently, she's done a short stint in PR in the not-for-profit sector, and led the news team at Wheels Media. Read more about Catherine Fisk.
Oh, well, if you're going to let the car Tesla, let the car Tesla who drive itself or who self-drive itself. You have to trust and it will do the job for you anyway. But can you jump in between while it's doing the job and you think, this time I'm taking over now, so press some certain button and then jump, or it goes on the side and stops, and then you jump in and take over.
Tesla, current and upcoming models, prices, specs, and more. Electric. Tesla is a transportation and energy company. It sells vehicles under its Tesla Motors division and stationary battery pack for home, commercial and utility scale projects under its Tesla Energy division. The history of Tesla. Sure, you now know Tesla as a Cerberus of energy innovation, software, and booming stock, but it wasn't always the clean energy juggernaut we know today. In fact, Tesla as a company has overcome quite a few obstacles to get where it stands today as the most valuable automaker by market cap. Tesla Incorporated was founded in 2003 as Tesla Motors by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning. If you've been living on a deserted island or under a large rock the past 18 years, you may be surprised to hear that the company's name is a tribute to inventor Nikola Tesla. Regardless, Ian Wright joined Tesla shortly thereafter, and the three original employees were off to the races in search of funding. That's where Elon Musk comes in. In early 2004, Tesla Motors managed to raise $7.5 million in series of funding, including investor Musk, who contributed all but $1 million of that total. As a result, Musk joined the company as chairman of the board. J.B. Straubel, now of QuantumScape fame, joined Tesla in May 2004 as employee number 5. As a result of the first of many controversies surrounding the company, a 2009 lawsuit settlement allows all 5 of the original employees to call themselves co-founders. Elon Musk. After an early investment and a role at the company, Musk began spearheading public statements for Tesla while helping facilitate more funding. This included several additional rounds, each garnering tens of millions of dollars. Musk openly discussed the company's strategy of creating a sleek and stylish sports car to attract early adopters and their wallets before expanding production to more practical and affordable EVs with the cash flow to scale. This led to the introduction of Tesla's flagship EV, the Roadster, which debuted as a prototype in the summer of 2006. In 2007, co-founder Martin Eberhard was asked to step down as CEO by the board of directors, and by early 2008, neither Eberhard nor Tarpenning was still at Tesla. That is when Musk took over as CEO, a position he still holds today. Along with Technoking of Tesla. The Roadster. The Tesla Roadster hit production in 2008 as the original electric vehicle to debut for the American automaker. It helped show that EVs could be carbon conscious and cool, helping pave the way for Tesla to develop and sell more practical and efficient vehicles. Although it was a niche vehicle from a relatively unknown automaker at the time, the Roadster emerged as the first highway-legal serial production BEV to use lithium-ion batteries. It was also the first fully electric production vehicle to travel over 200 miles on a single charge. Tesla ended up selling close to 2,500 first-generation Roadsters over the course of the 4 years it was in production. Small potatoes by today's Tesla standards, but this Roadster remains the EV that put Tesla on the map and kicked in the door of an industry still very much focused on internal combustion engines. It remains a collector's item for many as the original Tesla. Used Roadsters remain coveted EVs and are still available on the used car market. Model S, energy storage, and Model X. Tesla started to gain steam in 2010 when it purchased what would become its Fremont factory to begin production on 2 new EVs. Later that year, Tesla launched an IPO on the Nasdaq as the first American automaker to do so in over 50 years. After discontinuing the Roadster in early 2012, Tesla began production on its Model S sedan the following summer. 2015 proved to be another tremendous year for the automaker, as Tesla ventured into energy storage solutions with the introduction of its Powerwall for the home and PowerPack battery packs. Shortly thereafter, Tesla introduced its third EV, an SUV called the Model X, Solar, and Model 3. In 2016, Tesla acquired SolarCity, thus entering the solar energy game as well. It was at this point that the company dropped the motors from its name, which includes solar and energy solutions in addition to electric vehicles. Profits from previous EV models and new energy ventures allowed Tesla to scale and produce its Model 3 sedan, a mass-market EV that remains the most affordable option in the company fleet. Production issues plagued the entire production process on the Model 3. But Tesla was eventually able to deliver at a reasonable price, making it one of the best-selling EVs of all time in its short tenure. Model Y and beyond. It would be 3 whole years before Tesla would deliver a new EV after the Model 3, but in March of 2020, the Model Y crossover emerged. Tesla continues to sell many of the 2 newly introduced EVs compared to the original S and X models, although both have seen a significant refresh this year. For now, Tesla continues to expand its global production presence with 2 new gigafactories on the way, along with 3 additional vehicles. This includes Cybertruck, the Tesla Semi, and a second-generation Roadster. We will get deeper into those models a little later. For now, we will focus on Tesla's current EV offerings. Current Tesla EVs. As the company currently stands, Tesla has 4 electric vehicles in its fleet, varying in a number of ways, particularly in availability. In terms of sedans, Tesla has its veteran Model S and more consumer-friendly Model 3. The Model X sits as Tesla's largest EV on the current market, while the Model Y is the company's most recent offering as more of a smaller, crossover SUV. Below is a breakdown of each vehicle in greater detail. Model S. The Model S sedan is Tesla's longest-running EV in production to date. It made its official debut in 2012 after years as a prototype for the automaker. Since then, the sporty EV has reigned as the best-selling plug-in electric in both 2015 and 2016. Sales of the veteran Tesla have slowed since the launch of the automaker's more cost-friendly Model 3 and Model Y EVs. But the Model S still sits as a premier sedan that offers a variety of luxury and performance for those who can afford it. You can check out 2021 Model S pricinger. The current long-range trim can travel 405 miles on a single charge, hit a top speed of 155 miles per hour, and tear from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3.1 seconds. Tesla recently revealed in its Model S refresh that the vehicle will now come in either a Plaid or Plaid Plus trim with varied range. Model S Plaid/Plaid Plus. Tesla originally claimed the Plaid Plus will be able to travel an EPA-estimated 520-plus miles on a single charge compared to 390 miles on the regular old Plaid. Either tri-motor option can also reach a top speed of 200 miles per hour, blowing a hole through the top speed previously held by its ludicrous mode. At 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 2 seconds, this upcoming Tesla EV has already claimed the thrown-off quickest of any production car ever. Originally, the Plaid was scheduled to begin deliveries this spring with the Plaid Plus to follow in late 2021. Those plans have since changed, however. In June, Elon Musk revealed that Tesla would be scrapping the Plaid Plus models altogether because no one needs more than 400 miles of range and the new Plaid is just so good. The Model S's Plaid is now available and has been delivering to customers. However, those who order now likely won't see their delivery until 2022. For those who were holding receipts for the Plaid Plus, you may want to put that money toward a second-generation Roadster. Here's a quick catch-up. Tesla Model S Plaid laps Nürburgring in 7:35.579, production electric record. Tesla pushes estimated delivery dates for both Model S trims. Tesla puts new Model S deliveries on hold, and it's unclear why. Tesla restarts Model S deliveries after a strange week-long hold. Tesla buyers are asking for better communications over messy Model S deliveries. Tesla apologizes for new Model S delays, but some worrying things are going on. Tesla's Model X. Tesla's Model X, its largest EV currently available, holds seniority as the automaker's second longest-running model on its assembly lines behind the Model S. While the Model X was originally unveiled in 2012, its first deliveries were not until the fall of 2015 due to production delays, particularly on its distinct falcon wing doors. Shortly thereafter, the Model X quickly ranked as one of the top-selling plug-in EVs worldwide. Although sales have since staggered a bit following the release of the less expensive Model 3 and Model Y. The Model X hadn't seen any substantial overhauls since its initial rollout. That was until early this year when Tesla finally confirmed a refresh was, in fact, coming. With the new refresh, the Model X will be soon available in either dual-motor ODE or a tri-motor plaid option. The dual-motor Model X long range can travel 360 miles on a single charge, a slight downgrade of 11 miles from the previous long-range Plus. That being said, it can still hit a top speed of 155 miles per hour, and its 0 to 60 miles per hour acceleration of 3.8 seconds is an improvement of 0.6 seconds compared to its previous version, Model X Plaid. Additionally, Tesla has dropped the performance trim Model X in favor of a tri-motor plaid option. This version can travel an EPA estimated 340 miles, reach a top speed of 163 miles per hour, and go 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.5 seconds. Truthfully, this feels more like a rebranding than anything, as the Plaid powertrain offers nearly the same specs as the previous performance trim. Plaid loses 1 mile of estimated range in exchange for 0.1 seconds saved on its 0 to 60. The top speed of 163 miles per hour remains the same. Those interested in the refreshed Model X will have to continue to wait, however, as the delivery times have been continually pushed throughout 2021. In fact, these models were originally scheduled to arrive in April of 2021, but both trims were pushed to deliver in January or February of 2022. While some new versions of the Model X were recently spotted, delivery times are listed as May or June of 2022. Might want to check out versions of the Model X that are currently available for delivery. Model 3. From the early years after Tesla's inception, CEO Elon Musk was candid about the automaker's goal of providing quality EVs most consumers could afford to drive. With 2016's announcement of its Model 3 sedan, Tesla came one step closer to its goal of an EV at $35,000. After an encouraging number of early reservations were made for Tesla's most affordable model to date, the Model 3 debuted in 2017. Since then, it has cruised comfortably in the fast lane of sales. The EV currently sits as the world's best-selling all-electric vehicle and has accounted for a majority of the total Teslas sold in recent years. Tesla, briefly, sold a $35,000 version of the Model 3 to hit a price point originally promised by Elon Musk in years leading up to the first delivery. Last November, however, Tesla quietly removed this option during a refresh for its 2021 model. For perspective, the current version sits at a purchase price of $41,990 for the standard range plus trim with 0 added features. Tesla's Model 3 currently sells 3 separate drivetrains to choose from, each offering various ranges and speeds based on a customer's preferences and budget. The most affordable trim, the Standard Range Plus, travels an EPA estimated 263 miles, has a top speed of 140 miles per hour, and can travel 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.3 seconds. Moving up the ladder to the long-range trim, this version can travel 353 miles per charge and has a top speed of 145 miles per hour. Furthermore, its 0 to 60 time is 4.2 seconds flat. The Performance Model 3, on the other hand, sheds 38 miles of range compared to the long range, 315 miles, in favor of speed. This trim tops out at 162 miles per hour and can dart 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.1 seconds. Tesla's Model Y. Tesla unveiled its Model Y in 2019 as a smaller, crossover version of its larger and more established Model X midsize SUV. After beginning deliveries to customers in March of 2020, the Model Y remains the newborn in the Tesla family but has still managed to make a significant splash in sales during its short tenure on the EV market. Last fall, Tesla CEO Elon Musk nixed a standard range Model Y option but still promised a rear-wheel drive, RWD long-range model to follow. It then appeared that Tesla had gone back to standard range RWD Model Y, as it recently made this option available on its website almost as quickly as it was implemented.
All right, I'm stopping to tell us they're building new cars that can be intelligent and can drive by itself. I don't know the answer of all this, though, but still, I brought you that news soon because I needed to get it out.
News in Australia. Refugees can obtain non-citizen travel documents which are not same as an Australian passport to travel news, Google search. In Australia, refugees can obtain convention travel documents, CTDS, or certificates of identity, COIs, to facilitate travel. But these are not the same as an Australian passport. These documents are issued to non-citizens living in Australia, including refugees, who are not eligible for an Australian passport. Convention travel documents, CTDS. These are issued to refugees who are not Australian citizens and have been recognized as such by the Australian Department of Home Affairs. Certificates of identity, COIs. These are issued to individuals who are about to leave Australia and are either stateless or unable to obtain a travel document from their country of nationality. Purpose. These documents primarily facilitate travel for those who would otherwise be unable to travel due to the lack of a passport or travel document from their country of origin. Limitations. They do not confer Australian citizenship, Australian consular protection, or the right to re-enter or remain in Australia. Re-entry. To return to Australia, holders of CTDS or COIs will need to have a valid visa. Australian Passport Office. https://www.passports.gov.au. Non-citizen travel documents, Australian Passport Office. Travel documents, Australian Border Force. Convention travel documents or certificate of identity documents issued through the Australian Passport Office. A convention travel document, CTD, also known as Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Passport Policy, Australian Government Department of Foreign. An Australian passport represents the bearer as an Australian citizen. In most cases, an Australian travel-related document does not. CTDS and COIs are issued T. Recognition of foreign passports. Australia, Recognition of Foreign Passports, Library of Congress. Australia issues two types of travel documents to non-citizens that may be available to persons who were persecuted in their country of origin, Convention. TRAVE. Travel documents, Australian Border Force. Convention travel documents or certificate of identity documents issued through the Australian Passport Office. A convention travel document, CTD, also known as Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Passport Policy, Australian Government Department of Foreign. An Australian passport represents the bearer as an Australian citizen. In most cases, an Australian travel-related document does not. CTDS and COIs are issued T. Non-citizen travel documents, Australian Passport Office. Australian Passport Office. Travel documents, Australian Border Force. Convention travel documents or certificate of identity documents issued through the Australian Passport Office. A convention travel document, CTD, also known as Passport Policy, Australian Government Department of Foreign. An Australian passport represents the bearer as an Australian citizen. In most cases, an Australian travel-related document does not. CTDS and COIs are issued T. Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Australia, Recognition of Foreign Passports, Library of Congress. Australia issues two types of travel documents to non-citizens that may be available to persons who were persecuted in their country of origin, Convention. TRAVE. Recognition of Foreign Passports.
So when they come to Australia or something, like I am here now, I'm from another country, I'm from Chile. How do we prosecute or stop that your country's got a dictator, or you can't go back there, or now you're stuck in Australia and you're feeling sorry, you're waiting for papers to come so you can go back to your own country and all that? Really, there's back clutches, too much, too much, too much, too much, too much, too much killing in your own country, or you're persecuted in your own country, where your country is having difficulties and they're under civilian arrest or civil war or something. What's this one?
A new roadmap for Australia's economic engagement with India. Australian Government Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. India's world's fastest growing major economy. Not only is it growing fast, but it is growing in ways that our natural economic complementarity. There are enormous opportunity. Sad if we can grow in our commercial, entrepreneurial and people-to-people strengths to accelerate our economic engagement. A roadmap for Australia's economic engagement with India outline show a government intends to seize the opportunity that a relationship with India presents. Informed by over 400 consultations with private firms and public institutions in every Australian state and territory, and in India, the roadmap aims to focus and accelerate efforts and has sectors of most significant potential and set course for the next phase of our economic relationship with India.
Whoa, are you reading that correctly or what? You got all the words put together. Woohoo! Yoo-hoo! You got all the words reading together, man.
Australia and sanctions. Australian Government Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. News. The Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Minister, has by legislative instrument designated persons and entities for targeted financial sanctions and declared persons for travel bans, together, listed, in accordance with Item 6 amperes of Regulation 6 the Russia criteria, of the Autonomous Sanctions Regulations 2011 the Regulations. February 24, 2025. Category: International Relations. February 24, 2025. Category: International Relations. Over the coming months, the Australian Sanctions Office will be progressively making improvements to the PAX portal to enhance user experience and overall functionality. February 20, 2025. Category: International Relations. In accordance with Regulation 6A2 of the Autonomous Sanctions Regulations 2011 the Regulations. The Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Minister, has designated the following individuals for targeted financial sanctions and declared for travel bans. Together listed and designated one entity for targeted financial sanctions by legislative instrument. February 12, 2025. Category: International Relations. Pagination. Page 1. Next page. As of January 1, 2020, DFAT established the Australian Sanctions Office, ASO. As part of this establishment, we have rolled out changes to the website and launched our new sanctions platform, PAX. Who we are, what we do, the approach we take, and our partners. What you need to know. What are sanctions, who must comply, and details of our sanction regimes. What you need to do. Your responsibilities and a checklist to assist you. What we can do to help. Services we provide, sanctions, permits, and helpful information.
Shit. The other day, I saw the border security. Ooh, saw the border security show, and on that, they had sanction, like if you didn't bring any food or items into it. I'm almost worried about there could be another coronavirus infection and influenza that going on. You know what I mean? It's really bad for us. I don't know what I'm saying, but the world is corrupted a little bit in a way where there's wars and crime and drugs and prostitution. They sold that. Global security.
Nuclear weapons, Australian Government Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Australia is committed to the goal of a world without nuclear weapons. It has long championed international nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament efforts. Through a pragmatic, realistic, and progressive approach. Eliminating nuclear weapons will take sustained, practical, and incremental effort and will require inclusive processes that engage all states, including those that possess or rely on nuclear deterrence for their security. As a non-nuclear weapon state, Australia engages with other countries to advocate for disarmament and non-proliferation. Australia consistently promotes cooperation within existing disarmament architecture based on the Cornerstone Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. NPT. Australia is involved in several treaties and arrangements which seek to reduce or eliminate existing nuclear weapons and to prevent the proliferation of such weapons and their delivery vehicles. Australia consistently works to promote support for the NPT through the work of the Cross-Regional Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Initiative (NPDI), progressing nuclear disarmament verification and promoting risk reduction measures such as transparency and confidence building. To underpin practical progress towards disarmament, Australia was also instrumental in pushing for a comprehensive ban on nuclear tests. Was a key force behind the drafting of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and is a committed party to the South Pacific Nuclear Free Zone Treaty, also known as the Treaty of Rarotonga. Although not a party, Australia fully supports that treaty on the Southeast Asia Nuclear Weapon Free Zone, also known as the Bangkok Treaty. Contents. Does Australia have or want nuclear weapons? Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT. Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Initiative, NPDI. Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, CTBT. Fissile Material Cutoff Treaty, FMCT. South Pacific Nuclear Free Zone Treaty, Treaty of Rarotonga. Verification of Nuclear Disarmament, IPNDV, GEJ. Nuclear Risk Reduction. Nuclear Export Controls. Does Australia have or want nuclear weapons?
All right. We want it. This bit here.
News Treaty of Rarotonga. Although not a party, Australia fully supports the Treaty on the Southeast Asia Nuclear Weapon Free Zone, also known as the Bangkok Treaty. Australia, Google search. Australia, while not a party to the Treaty on the Southeast Asia Nuclear Weapon Free Zone, Bangkok Treaty, actively supports it. Australia is a founding member of the South Pacific Nuclear Free Zone Treaty, Treaty of Rarotonga, which aims to maintain the region free of nuclear weapons. Additionally, Australia upholds its obligations under the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT, committing not to receive, manufacture, or otherwise acquire nuclear weapons. Here's a more detailed breakdown. Australia's nuclear non-proliferation stance. Australia is a non-nuclear weapon state under the NPT and has made a clear commitment not to acquire or manufacture nuclear weapons. Support for nuclear weapon-free zones. Australia strongly advocates for the creation and strengthening of nuclear weapon-free zones, NWFs. Treaty of Rarotonga. Australia is a party to the South Pacific Nuclear Free Zone Treaty, Treaty of Rarotonga, which prohibits the use, testing, and possession of nuclear weapons within the zone. Bangkok Treaty. While not a signatory to the Bangkok Treaty, Australia supports its goals and actively engages with the Southeast Asian region on nuclear non-proliferation issues. International cooperation. Australia participates in international initiatives to strengthen the nuclear non-proliferation regime and prevent the spread of nuclear weapons. Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Nuclear weapons, Australian Government Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Other functions, Section 3, ASNO functions. South Pacific Nuclear Free Zone Treaty. The SPNFC treaty also bans the dumping of radioactive waste at sea. Australia ratified the treaty on December 11, 1986. Nuclear Threat Initiative, NTI. Australia Overview, Nuclear Threat Initiative, NTI. Australia plays an active role in nuclear safety and non-proliferation efforts. The Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation, ANSTO, works with Australian Submarine Agency. Nuclear Non-Proliferation, Australian Submarine Agency. October 2, 2024. Under the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, Australia has committed to not receive, manufacture or otherwise acquire nuclear weapons. Islands Business. https://islandsbusiness.com. Strengthening the Pacific's Nukes-Free Zone. November 8, 2023. The Treaty of Rarotonga bans the use, testing and possession of nuclear weapons within the borders of the zone. Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Nuclear weapons, Australian Government Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Other functions, Section 3, ASNO functions. South Pacific Nuclear Free Zone Treaty. The SPNFC treaty also bans the dumping of radioactive waste at sea. Australia ratified the treaty on December 11, 19. National Press Club Address, Australian Interests in a Regional Balance of Power, Australian Minister for Foreign Affairs. Thank you to the National Press Club for having me today, and to Jane for your introduction and moderating today's discussion. Thank you all for being here. I acknowledge members of the Diplomatic Corps, and my ministerial colleague Pat Conroy. I want to particularly acknowledge one of my guests today, Alan Gingell. Alan has been an official and unofficial advisor to governments for decades, always in singular service of Australia's national interest. He is the definitive historian of Australian foreign policy. He is the finest writer about Australian foreign policy. He is, frankly, the finest mind in Australian foreign policy. And possibly also the smallest ego in Australian foreign policy. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples, and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. First Nations peoples were this land's first diplomats and traders. But it was just this month that Mr. Justin Mohammed commenced his appointment as Australia's inaugural ambassador for First Nations people. Elevating First Nations perspectives will strengthen our connections across the world and in our region, especially across the Blue Pacific. The potential power of those connections has been neglected for too long, and it has been to our own detriment. When we ought to bring everything we have to the table. Self-evidently, the first thing we bring to the table is ourselves. As I travel, I tend to begin engagement by explaining who we are, a land that is home to the oldest continuous culture on the planet and to people from more than 300 ancestries. A nation whose people share common ground with so many of the world's peoples. When Australians look out to the world, we see ourselves reflected in it just as the world can see itself reflected in us. What that means is we have the ability to build on common ground with people around the world. This is a powerful natural asset for building alignment, for articulating our determination to see the interests of all the world's peoples upheld alongside our own. This matters because our foreign policy must be an accurate and authentic reflection of our values and interests, of who we are and what we want. And it matters because our national power, more than anything else, comes from our people. We need to harness all elements of our national power to advance our interests when the implications of unchecked strategic competition in our region are grave. So today I want to talk to you about how we avert war and maintain peace, and more than that, how we shape a region that reflects our national interests and our shared regional interests. Those interests lie in a region that operates by rules, standards, and norms, where a larger country does not determine the fate of a smaller country, where each country can pursue its own aspirations, its own prosperity. And I want to talk about how we contribute to the regional balance of power that keeps the peace by shaping the region we want. Strategic competition is operating on several levels. Domains that we might prefer to separate: economic, diplomatic, strategic, military, all interwoven. And all framed by an intense contest of narratives. But as well as understanding how competition is operating, we need to understand what is being competed for, that it is more than great power rivalry and is, in fact, nothing less than a contest over the way our region and our world work. Many commentators and strategists prefer to look at what is happening in the region simply in terms of great powers competing for primacy. They love a binary. And the appeal of a binary is obvious. Simple, clear choices. Black and white. But viewing the future of the region simply in terms of great powers competing for primacy means countries' own national interests can fall out of focus. It diminishes the power of each country to engage other than through the prism of a great power. It is also unhelpful to narrow this discussion to the potential of kinetic conflict on our shores, when regional interests are challenged by actions that fall far short of that. Coercive trade measures, unsustainable lending, political interference, disinformation, and reshaping international rules. Standards and norms that have benefited smaller countries, from trade to human rights, these all encroach on the ability of countries to exercise their agency, contribute to regional balance, and decide their own destinies. So countries like ours in this contested region need to sharpen our focus on what our interests are and how to uphold them. Our focus must be on what we need to do so we can live according to our own laws and values, determined by our own citizens, pursuing our own prosperity, making our own choices, respecting but not deferring to others. Our focus needs to be on how we ensure our fate is not determined by others, how we ensure our decisions are our own. And if there were any doubt, Russia's illegal and immoral invasion of Ukraine renders stark our interest in living in a region where no country dominates. And no country is dominated. It's true that Australia has always needed to apply ourselves with this focus. But it is especially true right now because our region faces circumstances in some ways unprecedented. And these circumstances require a response of unprecedented coordination and ambition in our statecraft. Tensions have risen between states with overlapping claims in the South China Sea. Compounding that have been the militarization of disputed features and dangerous encounters in the air and at sea. China continues to modernize its military at a pace and scale not seen in the world for nearly a century, with little transparency or assurance about its strategic intent. In August last year, 5 Chinese ballistic missiles were reported to have fallen in Japan's exclusive economic zone. And just last week, we saw China practice strikes and blockades around Taiwan. On top of that, North Korea continues to destabilize, with its ongoing nuclear weapons program and ballistic missile launches, threatening our friends in Japan, the Republic of Korea, and the broader region. Altogether, this combination of factors and the risk of miscalculation comprise the most confronting circumstances in decades. This is why I am so steadfast in refusing to engage in speculation about regional flashpoints, whether the Himalayas, Taiwan, the Korean Peninsula, or anywhere else. In particular, there is much frenzied discussion in political and media circles over timelines and scenarios when it comes to Taiwan. Anyone in positions like mine who feels an urge to add to that discussion should resist the temptation. It is the most dangerous of parlor games. My approach to this is not simply a politician seeking to avoid hypothetical questions. It is a frank and clear-eyed assessment of interests. We do not want to see any unilateral change to the status quo. We call for the peaceful resolution of cross-strait issues through dialogue without the threat or use of force or coercion. Because let me be absolutely clear, a war over Taiwan would be catastrophic for all. We know that there would be no real winners, and we know maintaining the status quo is comprehensively superior to any alternative. It will be challenging, requiring both reassurance and deterrence, but it is the proposition most capable of averting conflict and enabling the region to live in peace and prosperity. So I will say it now to the National Press Club: to avoid any possible misunderstanding, our job is to lower the heat on any potential conflict, while increasing pressure on others to do the same. The Albanese government does that here at home, and we do that in our diplomacy. That may not sell as many newspapers today, but it will help you to sell them for a lot longer. In our China relationship specifically, the Albanese government will be calm and consistent, and continue to do as we have since coming to office: cooperate where we can, disagree where we must, manage our differences wisely, and above all else, engage in and vigorously pursue our own national interest. We start with the reality that China is going to keep being China. Part of that is the reality of the world's second largest economy, representing 18% of the world's GDP. China's growth story has played a crucial role in alleviating poverty for its own people, the region, and the world. Its dramatic economic growth has been a driver of Australian prosperity. Even with increased diversification, China will remain Australia's largest trading partner for the foreseeable future, and a valued source of foreign investment where it meets our national interests. Beyond that, President Xi has made clear China's goal of being a great modern socialist country that leads the world in terms of composite national strength and international influence by the middle of the century. Like any country, China will deploy this strength and utilize this influence to advance its national interests. We know at times these interests will differ from our interests and from others in the region. Importantly, China understands national interest as being advanced by favorable outcomes, by reducing the possibility of unfavorable outcomes, and by reducing the space for disagreement or dissent. This understanding is coordinated through its persistent statecraft. A great power like China uses every tool at its disposal to maximize its own resilience and influence: its domestic industry policy, its massive international investment in infrastructure, diplomacy and military capability, access to its markets. This statecraft illustrates the challenge for middle powers, like us and our partners in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Yet we need not waste energy with shock or outrage at China seeking to maximize its advantage. Instead, we channel our energy in pressing for our own advantage. We deploy our own statecraft toward shaping a region that is open, stable, and prosperous. A predictable region, operating by agreed rules, standards, and laws, where no country dominates and no country is dominated. A region where sovereignty is respected and all countries benefit from a strategic equilibrium. A region that safeguards our capacity to disagree. A region that preserves our agency. A region that protects our ability to decide our own destiny. When we talk about our interests, this is what we mean. That kind of region doesn't simply exist organically. It demands our national effort, especially as some seek to rewrite the rules. That effort cannot be left to one or another arm of Australian government. Our diplomats cannot do it alone, nor can our military. And what we do in the world needs to reinforce and be reinforced by who we are and what we do at home. It takes investment in all elements of our national power. A more diversified economy, making more things here, responding to climate change and making Australia a renewable energy superpower. Strengthening trust in our institutions through the National Anti-Corruption Commission, facing our cybersecurity needs, investments in education and training, strengthening the services people rely on, growth in wages, all part of making Australia more robust and resistant to external shocks. Our economic security, our domestic resilience as a multicultural democracy, and our international engagement combine as our statecraft. The Albanese government is deploying all of these elements of national power to make Australia more stable, confident, and secure at home, and more influential in the world. Central to statecraft is our foreign policy, advancing Australian interests and values in our region and the world to keep Australians safe, to ensure our economic strength. It's the strategy we deploy to shape the region so that its character is closer to our interests, to avert conflict and maintain peace. That is what the countries of the region want too. ASEAN has expressed concern over actions that could destabilize the region and eventually lead to miscalculation, serious confrontation, open conflicts, and unpredictable consequences among major powers, and called for upholding multilateralism, partnership, and cooperation. As I said at the outset, strategic competition is not merely about who is top dog, who is ahead in the race, or who holds strategic primacy in the Indo-Pacific. It's actually about the character of the region. It's about the rules and norms that underpin our security and prosperity. that ensure our access within an open and inclusive region, and that manage competition responsibly. It's clear to me from my travels throughout the region that countries don't want to live in a closed, hierarchical region where the rules are dictated by a single major power to suit its own interests. Instead, we want an open and inclusive region based on agreed rules where countries of all sizes can choose their own destiny. Countries want a prosperous, connected region, trading together at the epicenter of global economic growth through a transparent system, where economic interdependence is not misused for political and strategic ends. And countries want a region that is peaceful and stable. That means sufficient balance to deter aggression and coercion, balance to which more players, including Australia, must contribute if it is to be durable. A balance where strategic reassurance through diplomacy is supported by military deterrence. It is why Australia is so invested in the idea of guardrails to manage great power competition, so it does not career into conflict. Guardrails where the major powers have reliable and open channels of communication at all levels to minimize the risk of misunderstanding and miscalculation. Where limits are established on each country's security policies. The guardrails that were developed in the wake of the Cuban Missile Crisis serve as a guide. President Biden has made overtures to China toward agreeing guardrails. It is in all the world's interests that his overtures are met. I have said this to my Chinese counterpart and to his predecessor. And I will keep saying it. And in my continuing travels, I will keep reminding my colleagues that it is in the interests of all of us with an existential interest in regional peace and stability to press for the responsible management of great power competition. Indeed, this is an interest that extends beyond the Indo-Pacific. All countries need to exercise our agency to avert war and maintain peace. And advocating this objective is the most critical aspect of Australia's diplomacy. This starts with the capability of our foreign service, our people on the ground that put our foreign policy into action. I am proud every day of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, so ably led by Jan Adams, here with us today. They provide vital strategic insights and warning, they champion our interests, they influence and persuade, they are in the room and at the table. They work with partners to deliver Australian assistance, they provide critical consular support for Australians in need. As a result of the previous government's failure to ensure long-term resourcing for our diplomatic capability, Australia's diplomatic footprint has actually shrunk. For all their talk of a Pacific step-up, the Morrison government actually had fewer diplomats working in the Pacific than when the Liberals took office. This is on top of the former government's $11.8 billion of cuts to our development program, which left vacuums for others to fill. Our first budget delivered the single biggest ODA increase since 2011-12 to build a stronger region. The Albanese government will soon release our new development policy. Development assistance is central to statecraft. It helps our regional partners become more economically resilient, develop critical infrastructure and provide their own security so they have less need to call on others. And all of this led by the engagement of the Prime Minister and other members of the government. In the 11 months since my appointment, I have visited 30 countries, 5 of them more than once. This week I will visit New Caledonia and Tuvalu, meaning I will have traveled to all Pacific Island Forum members as Foreign Minister. Our work had to start in the Pacific because the Pacific is family, because of the shortcomings of the previous government we needed to remedy, and because it is in Labour's DNA. I remind you of Gough Whitlam's partnership with Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare in Papua New Guinea's independence from Australia. Though Whitlam was not short of remarkable reforms, he said, "If history were to obliterate the whole of my public career, save my contribution to the independence of a democratic PNG, I should rest content." Many countries in the Pacific have lived the reality of great power competition spiraling into catastrophe and conflict when their own agency was sidelined and their voices ignored. Anyone who questions the strategic importance of Pacific Islands to Australia's security needs only acquire the briefest familiarity with history. While our strategic circumstances have changed in the last 50 years, our geography has not, and nor has the centrality of the Pacific to our own security. With the return of strategic contest to the region, this security is enhanced when we work together, when we respond to Pacific priorities, and when we respect Pacific institutions. As a member of the Pacific family, our priority is to ensure the Blue Pacific remains peaceful, prosperous and equipped to respond to the challenges of our time. That's why we have worked closely with our regional counterparts to help the Pacific family stay united, and why we will continue to elevate Pacific voices on the issues that matter most to our region. Our view and the view of the Pacific Islands Forum is that the Pacific family is responsible for Pacific security. We're realistic about what is happening in the Pacific. We know that things won't go back to how they were before. We make our concerns clear when countries don't respect Pacific institutions, when they impose unsustainable debt burdens, or when announcements aren't followed by delivery that benefits communities. We want Australia to be a partner of choice for the countries of our region. Partners, not patriarchs. We have delivered real action on climate change after 9 years of disrespect from the previous government. We have increased our ODA to the Pacific by nearly $1 billion over 4 years. We've boosted our infrastructure investments and established a dedicated climate and infrastructure partnership to deliver climate-resilient investments for Pacific needs. We've expanded and improved Pacific labor mobility programs and are working with partner governments to ensure the skills gained pay dividends for all. We've enhanced our maritime security cooperation, signed a bilateral security treaty with Vanuatu and are making progress on a treaty with PNG. Signed a status of forces agreement with Fiji, helped partners restore critical services in the wake of massive cyber attacks and responded to natural disasters, most recently cyclones Judy and Kevin in Vanuatu. We are helping regional partners become more economically resilient, develop critical infrastructure and provide their own security so they have less need to call on others. Without these investments, others will continue to fill the vacuum and Australia will continue to lose ground as we did under the Liberals and Nationals. The principle of our approach to the Pacific, smaller countries working together in a way that strengthens influence, leverage and sovereignty, is a fundamental principle of Australian foreign policy, grounded in the work of Australia's greatest foreign minister, Dr. Herbert Evatt. Australia's foreign policy, at its best, has never simply been what you do with the great powers. Countries like us need an international system that constrains power with rules. That was what Evatt worked so hard to achieve at the San Francisco conference, understanding that our interests could never be served just by winning favor with the great powers of the day. Yet whether Menzies or Howard, there have been those throughout Australia's history who have thought our foreign policy should simply be to attach ourselves to a great power. Now some imply we should attach ourselves to what they anticipate will be a hegemonic China. But the Albanese government will always be more ambitious for Australia. We will always pursue greater self-reliance and a more active foreign policy. Today we modernize the Evatt legacy, working with partners and friends in the region to exercise agency and maintaining an equilibrium that benefits us all. That is what we seek to achieve through our valued bilateral strategic cooperation with partners throughout the region. That is what we seek to do through our regional partnerships with ASEAN and the Pacific Islands Forum. When the Prime Minister welcomes Prime Ministers Modi and Kishida and President Biden to Australia next month, we will acknowledge the critical contribution of the Quad and also the power, weight and influence of Japan and India, which in their own right are contributing to strategic balance. And AUKUS represents an evolution of our relationships with the US and the UK, helping make Australia itself a stronger partner for the region. Our approach matters in the Pacific and it matters in Southeast Asia. To return to an earlier point, some would see Southeast Asia as a mere theater for great power competition. That is not a view we share, because it strips Southeast Asian nations and the enduring, central institution of ASEAN of their influence, dynamism and agency, of their ability to make sovereign choices in pursuit of their national and collective interests. It glosses over the complex dynamics that exist within and between Southeast Asian nations, the ways in which the countries of our region seek to maximize their influence in the face of strategic competition, and how they determine their own responses to the real and direct challenges to their sovereignty, including in the South China Sea. It downplays the ways in which Australia and our partners can work with the region to enhance our collective security and prosperity. And importantly, it presents passivity as a feasible option, that it's possible to stand by and hope for the best while others make choices on our behalf. That diminishes our ability, both Australia and our neighbors in Southeast Asia, to shape the kind of region we want to live in. That's why the Albanese government has made engagement with ASEAN and its members a core priority. By the first anniversary of our government, I will have visited every country in Southeast Asia as foreign minister except Myanmar. This diplomatic effort must be complemented by increased economic engagement. The government's Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040, due for release later this year, is central to that, as is our web of free trade agreements with regional partners. Not only is this mutually beneficial, but it creates the shared value that is a critical incentive for peace. In a diverse region of more than 675 million people, we have to be targeted about how we can maximize our impact and work with partners to reinforce and multiply that effect, to create opportunity together, and to demonstrate to the region that there are interests to nurture beyond security interests, to build the assurance that comes with knowing that their success is our success. That's why we encourage greater economic engagement in Southeast Asia by the United States and other partners from the Indo-Pacific and beyond, including through IPEF. We can't talk about the balanced region we want without being clear about America's importance to that balance. And I think it's time for some reality checks here. There is no greater turning point in Australian history than Curtin's wartime turn to America. The United States is our closest ally and principal strategic partner. The Indo-Pacific would not have enjoyed its long, uninterrupted period of stability and prosperity without the U.S. and its security guarantee to the region. The whole region benefits from U.S. engagement, from their contribution to the region's strategic balance. America has often been talked of as the indispensable power. It remains so. But the nature of that indispensability has changed. As we seek a strategic equilibrium, with all countries exercising their agency to achieve peace and prosperity, America is central to balancing a multipolar region. Many who take self-satisfied potshots at America's imperfections would find the world a lot less satisfactory if America ceased to play its role. Having said that, we cannot just leave it to the U.S. All countries of the region must exercise their agency through diplomatic, economic, and other engagement to maintain the region's balance and to uphold the norms and rules that have underpinned decades of peace and prosperity. And this balance must be underwritten by military capability. Last month, Australia and our AUKUS partners announced our pathway for acquiring nuclear-powered submarines, the single biggest investment in our defense capability in our history, representing a transformational moment for our nation, our defense force, and our economy. Just as we each have a responsibility to help maintain the conditions for peace through our diplomacy, we also have a responsibility to play our part in collective deterrence of aggression. If any country can make the calculation that they can successfully dominate another, the region becomes unstable and the risk of conflict increases. As the Defense Strategic Update in 2020 emphasized, Australia must take responsibility for our own security, meaning we must grow our own ability to deliver deterrent effects. In an age of military modernization, as other militaries can operate from increased range, with faster speed and greater precision and lethality. Taking responsibility for our security means being able to hold potential adversaries' forces and infrastructure at risk from a greater distance. By having strong defense capabilities of our own, and by working with partners investing in their own capabilities, we change the calculus for any potential aggressor. We must ensure that no state will ever conclude that the benefits of conflict outweigh the risks. This is fundamental to assuring the safety and security of our nation and our people. Our foreign and defense policies are two essential and interdependent parts of how we make Australia stronger and more influential in the world. Together, they make it harder for states to coerce other states against their interests through force or the threatened use of force. Together, they contribute to the strategic balance of power that keeps the peace in our region. As my colleague Richard Marles has said, deterrence isn't an alternative to cooperation. Together, they are mutually reinforcing. Now, an undertaking as big as AUKUS in a democracy like ours should attract scrutiny. Some are concerned the price is too high. There are two responses to that. First, in the context of the scale and speed of the military build-up in our region, a serious financial investment is required to have credible defense capabilities of our own and making our contribution to regional balance. Second, much of the financial investment is in ourselves, in our own jobs, industry, and sovereign capability. Let's not forget AUKUS is about more than submarines. It's also about joint development of capabilities including artificial intelligence, quantum technology, and cyber. Some are concerned about timeframes. It's true that we lost a lot of time over 9 years of capability announcements with no delivery. But we can't go back in time, we can only get to work on the best way forward to deliver the necessary capability at a realistic pace, with the lowest transition risk. It is why the pathway doesn't just involve acquiring Virginia-class submarines or building our own, but also extending the life of the Collins-class. And some have raised concerns about nuclear non-proliferation. Labor has a proud history of championing practical international non-proliferation and disarmament efforts. having ratified the Treaty for the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, and will ensure we continue to meet its obligations to the highest and most rigorous standards. Our AUKUS partners understand and recognize Australia's commitments under international law, including the Treaty of Rarotonga. Naval nuclear propulsion is consistent with our obligations under the Treaty of Rarotonga. The U.S. has confirmed that the nuclear-powered submarines visiting Australia on rotation will be conventionally armed. And while we are not a party to it, Australia will continue to act in a manner that is consistent with the basic principles of the Bangkok Treaty. We have and will continue to engage regularly and transparently with the EA and with our regional partners. I thank our partners for their willingness to engage and for their public messages of appreciation of our efforts to keep them informed. I particularly note the comment from Indonesia that maintaining peace and stability in the region is the responsibility of all countries. It is critical for all countries to be a part of this effort. That is precisely what we are doing. Australia is fortunate in so many ways, not least in the way we benefit from the foresight of our greatest statespeople, Curtin, Evatt, and Whitlam. They showed us the path to advance our national interests in the world. That path continues today in modernizing their legacies of alliance, partnerships, rules, and region. That path guides us as well as ever as we face today's circumstances with the foresight to benefit the generations that follow us. I want to conclude with a point I make with many audiences around the world because it really gets to the heart of it. Today's circumstances have prompted comparisons with 1914, the 1930s, and 1962. Those comparisons should serve as warnings, but nothing more. Because we are not hostages to history. We decide what to do with the present. We are investing in our national power, not just to guard against regional contest, but to shape and influence it to advance our national and shared interests. We are doing this by creating deterrence, with major military investments in future capability, including through the AUKUS partnership. We are doing this by creating domestic economic resilience, addressing climate change and energy security through more robust supply chains, making more things in Australia, and skilling our people. And we are doing this by investing in our diplomatic power, renewing Australia's closest partnerships, and advancing our interests and values. Our decision is to use all elements of our national power to shape the world in our interests, and to shape it for the better.
Whoa, that took a long time, to read. Read that. That's fuck yeah. That rules. That fuck yeah. Australia, 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 that's what Australia is doing. The world. The world.
SBS Audio is supported by advertising.
What is it really like to start calling Australia home? Find out with this podcast from SBS Audio.
My first year on Aussie soil looks at how new migrants found their feet in Australia, their highs, lows, and hilarious first impressions.
Or on New Home, hear from Migrant and Refugee
Secretary Pete Hegseth. And in sport, Gart eliminated from the Stool Gift event in regional Victoria. With the latest SBS News, I'm Deborah Groark. Early voting centres will open across Australia from tomorrow morning, a fortnight before the main election day on Saturday, May the 3rd. Early voting will also be available for Australians voting overseas at embassies, consulates and high commissions. Millions of people are expected to vote this way, with data showing more than 5.6 million voters pre-polled at the last election. Members of the crossbench have criticised Prime Minister Anthony Albanese over reports he overrode his cabinet to scupper reform around gambling ads late last year. A landmark gambling harm inquiry chaired by late Labor MP Peter Murphy suggested a total advertising phase-out. But almost 2 years later, the government has not acted on this key recommendation. 9 newspapers have said Mr Albanese intervened to forestall the reforms, which had been developed by Communications Minister Michelle Rowland. Green Senator Sarah Hanson-Young says that was the wrong choice.
That's just despicable and hugely disappointing that the Labor Party does not have the guts to stand up to the gambling lobby and do what needs to be done. Well, with the Greens in the balance of power, we will force Labor to do what is needed. We know that it's time to end those insidious, dangerous gambling ads that are wrecking families and destroying people's lives.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister says the Labor Party is considering changes to parent visas to tackle a backlog that has seen wait times for visa applicants extend to up to 50 years. Mr Albanese says the government's inquiry has found that between 2010 and 2022, the applications backlog more than doubled to 120,000 from around 35,000.
The Parkinson Review was one of the 3 reviews that took place that showed the mess that we had to clean up. The department simply didn't have enough staff. We are working on these issues, but we inherited an absolute mess when we came to office.
Meanwhile, Peter Dutton has pledged a coalition government would not cut Australia's annual parent visa intake. Labor increased the intake from 4,500 to 8,500 when it came to government. Work is underway to establish Tasmania's first Sea Country Indigenous Protected Area. The listing would support conservation, protection and management of the area, which includes ecologically important seagrass beds. The proposal for the protected area will focus around the Furneaux Islands in Bass Strait, also known as Tayarija. Dr Beth Strain from the University of Tasmania says a management plan is being developed in a collaboration between her campus, the Tasmanian Aboriginal Centre and Deakin University in Victoria.
What we're aiming to do is basically to primarily map the seagrass beds around the Furneaux group, because basically they're large and extensive, probably thought to be the largest around South Australia, but they haven't been extensively mapped before.
In the United States, the Defence Secretary has become embroiled in a second scandal over his use of the Signal app. It's been reported that Pete Hegseth shared details of a March attack on Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthis in a message group that included his wife, brother and personal lawyer. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell has dismissed the reports, saying in a post on X that he believes it's a witch hunt by the media to destroy anyone committed to Trump's agenda. But Democrat lawmakers have called for Mr Hegseth to be sacked, saying his actions have put lives at risk. To France, and the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris has held its first Easter celebration since reopening to the public in December last year, following years of reconstruction. The gatherings brought together leaders and the faithful from various Christian denominations for a shared moment of prayer, unity and reflection beneath the newly restored Gothic vaults of the centuries-old cathedral. Archbishop Laurent Ulrich has delivered the address to worshippers.
Brothers and sisters, welcome to this renovated cathedral that some of you are, of course, discovering today. It's a great joy, a great celebration, a great time of peace in our hearts, and we hope a great peace that rises in the hearts of all people to fight against the spirit of division.
To sport, and big guns Lachlan Kennedy and Gout have both been knocked out of the $40,000 stall gift foot race. Kennedy came a close second to 17-year-old Dash Muir, while Gout was beaten by title favourite John Evans. I'm Deborah Grook. This is SBS News.
Oh, that was it. That was it. Okay. Gotta get out of the inner right and into this one. No. Get out of, go into this one first. You gotta spell that. The well.
Wherever Pope Francis went, the sights and sounds of his adoring supporters followed. His papacy took him to more than 50 nations, travelling more than 400,000 kilometres in his quest to carry an ancient institution into the modern world.
On the words that we have just heard from the Holy Father.
Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio on the 17th of December 1936 in Argentina, the son Son of Italian migrants, he survived a life-threatening bout of pneumonia as a 21-year-old. The young Bergoglio earned a diploma in chemistry before studying to become a priest. He was ordained in the Jesuit order just days before his 33rd birthday and was appointed Archbishop of his hometown, Buenos Aires, in 1998. At the age of 76, Jorge Mario Bergoglio was named the 266th head of the Church, taking the name Pope Francis.
Buonasera.
The first Catholic leader ever chosen from the Americas or the Jesuit order, he was immediately dubbed the People's Pope.
The
duty of the conclave is to give Rome a bishop. But it seems that my brother cardinals went almost to the end of the world, but we are here.
Vatican spokesman Father Thomas Rosica says the choice was well received.
There was an immediate connection. He made a connection with his diocese, the Diocese of Rome. He referred to that. The pastor came to meet his people, and it was beautiful. Then he took the microphone again, and he didn't follow the book. Thank God.
But from the moment it began, his papacy faced challenges, chief amongst them addressing a litany of child sex abuse scandals in the church and lifting the veil of silence around such crimes. The Pope himself came under intense scrutiny in 2018 when he defended a Chilean bishop, Juan Barros, accused of covering up priests' sexual abuse and dismissed his victims' allegations as slander. It was a move that caused widespread anger in the Catholic stronghold. Clerical abuse victim James Hamilton had this to say at the time.
What the Pope has done today is offensive and painful, not only for us, but against all of those who fight to create less abusive and more ethical contexts in places like the Catholic Church.
Later that year, Pope Francis apologised, saying he had made a grave error of judgment. He went on to implement the most extensive church reforms in decades, criminalising grooming by priests under church law and abolishing the secrecy laws that long allowed sexual abuse to go unreported.
It is my hope that the gravity of the abuse scandals which have cast light on the failings of many will serve to emphasize the importance of the protection of minors and vulnerable adults on the part of society as a whole.
Sexuality would prove to be another defining issue. In 2016, he told reporters the church owed gay people an apology. In 2020, he broke ranks once more, declaring his support for same-sex civil unions in a documentary about his life, though the Vatican later clarified that priests are not permitted to bless such unions. And after a visit to South Sudan, he spoke out again, denouncing the newest nation on earth for criminalising homosexuality.
Questo non è giusto.
This is not right. People with homosexual tendencies are children of God. God loves them.
Dio li vuole bene.
Many praised him as a progressive pope in the face of a deeply conservative opposition from within his own church. He called on the church to embrace divorced Catholics, who were historically shunned, and was fiercely outspoken about wealth inequality. One of the Pope's greatest passions was the environment, criticising its human destruction as a sin against God.
I appeal to all the world's leaders to act courageously with justice and always tell the truth to people, so that people may know how to protect themselves from the destruction of the planet, and how to protect the planet from the destruction that very often we trigger.
Pope Francis also met the families of Israeli hostages, and Palestinian Musa Aya says he spoke to Gaza's only Catholic parish every day.
During the war, I know because I was with the priest, Father Yusuf, he would call every day at 7 o'clock to check on Gaza and the situation of the war, and he would wish us safety and wish for the war to stop. He would wish for peace every day.
In 2023, he became the first pope in more than 200 years to preside over the funeral of his predecessor, though he was frail and had to be brought in on a wheelchair. The Pope's public addresses became fewer in his final years, but they often consisted of pleas for peace in a world racked with war. Still, he kept snapping selfies with the public, replied personally to letters and phone calls from regular people, and even visited a prison to wash inmates' feet, saying bishops are not the world's most important people, but must be its greatest servants. Church historian Paul Collins says he was a pope seemingly unafraid to challenge the way the church operated. He says his efforts were about making one of the world's oldest organisations a more inclusive place.
I'd say he's probably the most important pope since the Reformation. His legacy is a legacy of recovering extremely important elements within the Christian and Catholic tradition, those pastoral care elements, those elements of openness to people who are marginalised. He sees the church, he says, as a hospital. It's a place where the sick go to be cured, where the people go to be supported, where people go to be cared for.
Pope Francis was 88. Sunil Awasthi, SBS News.
Whoa.
You're listening to
Whoa. You're listening to the 5-4 C. Oh, no. Oh, now we can go to here. Now, this one is...
SBS live streams and podcasts are supported by advertising.
The final season of the Emmy Award-winning phenomenon is here. This is the beginning of the end. Don't miss the thrilling conclusion of The Handmaid's Tale. Stream free, only on SBS On Demand.
In this bulletin, the coalition flags a plan to boost small business if it wins the next election. At least 148 people killed in a boat accident in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And in AFL, Carlton post consecutive AFL wins for the first time in 10 months. With the latest from the SBS newsroom, I'm Sam Dover. The coalition says it wants to see the number of small businesses in Australia grow by 350,000 in 4 years if it wins the next election. Under the plan, new businesses will be given a boost with new tax offsets that will allow new traders to reinvest in the business. Opposition leader Peter Dutton says it's about encouraging people to start businesses at all levels.
Particularly smaller businesses, micro businesses starting up, somebody with a bedroom at the back of the house or a part of the garage where they're now producing or they're now providing a service to a bigger company and they want their business to grow. And we want to encourage small business in this country.
At least 148 people have been killed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo after a motorized wooden boat caught fire and capsized. Local officials say the boat was carrying as many as 500 passengers, including women and children, when it overturned on Tuesday in the Congo River in the country's northwest region. The boat, called HB Congolo, caught fire while a person was cooking on board near...
Oh, Hector, you got the SBS News. When you listen to SBS News in Australia, it's an Australian news, right? It's on my TV and everything. It's called SBS channel. It's called SBS, the normal one, SBS, the food one, SBS Pop Asia, SBS Pop India, and it's got others, NITV, National Indigenous Channel. SBS is the international one. By saying that, no, you go, oh, the news sector. Remember, it might be like mixed with other countries. It's mixed with other country news. When you listen to it, it's mixed. I don't know. It's mixed anyway.
SBS Audio is supported by advertising.
Do you know who's influencing your kids? Young people engage in a wide range of online activities. It's important to understand what they're seeing and hearing. Learn how to talk about respect.
SBS Audio is supported by advertising.
Do you know who's influencing your kids? Young people engage in a wide range of online activities. It's important to understand what they're seeing and hearing. Learn how to talk about respect and respectful relationships with the young people in your life. Tune in to the special edition of SBS Australia Explained on the SBS Audio app or your favourite podcast platform to learn more.
In this bulletin, the Palestine Red Crescent says an Israeli investigation into the killing of 15 Gaza medics is full of lies. Documents show Melbourne's COVID curfew was not based on medical advice. And in athletics, Gap prepares for the stall gift. With the latest from the SBS newsroom, I'm Gabrielle Catanascio. The Palestine Red Crescent has rejected the findings of an Israeli military investigation that blamed operational failures for the killing of 15 Gaza emergency service workers, denouncing the report as full of lies. 14 emergency workers and a UN worker were killed on the 23rd of March after a convoy of Palestinian Red Crescent Society ambulances, a UN car and a fire truck came under fire by the Israeli military. The United Nations Humanitarian Agency called the site where the bodies were found, Rafah's Tal al-Sultan area, a mass grave. An inquiry into the incident by Israel's military found a series of failings. It says the deputy commander of the unit involved has been dismissed for providing an incomplete and inaccurate report during the debrief. Without providing evidence, the investigation concluded 6 of the casualties were Hamas members and rejected that there had been summary executions. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency says Israel killed at least 25 people across the Strip on Easter Sunday, while also restricting the access of Palestinian Christians to holy sites in occupied East Jerusalem. That pushes the death toll past 1,800 in the last...
Oh, míralo, mana que no pateo, de pate, no pone en tubo, Well, when they're talking about it, they say Israel killed 21 of their residents or whatever. So that it doesn't count. And I'm not against Israel or anything like that. I don't know. I'm from Chile, so I wouldn't know. You know what I mean? But when they talk about that, they did kill some, and it's all right. Like the other kill as well. So both sides are killing each other or something. It's not on, eh? It's not on. Why don't you stop killing each other and kiss and make up, man?
Of Palestinian Red the debrief. Without providing evidence, the investigation concluded 6 of the casualties were Hamas members and rejected that there had been summary executions. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency says Israel killed at least 25 people across the Strip on Easter Sunday, while also restricting the access of Palestinian Christians to holy sites in occupied East Jerusalem. That pushes the death toll past 1,800 in the last month and comes as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows to continue war without yielding to Hamas's demands. Palestinian Christian Khader al-Nasrawi says the conflict has made it difficult.
Again, you can't stop it, bro. Can't stop it. Anyway, again, he's saying Mr. Yahoo will not stop the war. He'll just keep going or something like that, whatever. What keeps anyone, even me, you, whatever, to start war or become war or whatever? Anyway, why war? What's the meaning of that?
To 25 people across the Strip.
Just like every other resident of Gaza City, we were displaced from our homes, which were destroyed, and we were forced to take refuge in St. Porphyrius Church and the Holy Family Church. We lived as displaced people in halls and rooms. St. Porphyrius Church was bombed, resulting in the martyrdom of more than 20 people. The Holy Family Church was under siege for more than 10 days. And there were threats to storm the church, but we refused to leave.
The Victorian opposition says it has obtained documents under Freedom of Information laws that show Melbourne's first COVID lockdowns were a political call, not based on health advice. An email exchange between some of the state's most senior health officials shows they did not propose the lockdown measures, although they did support them. Opposition spokesman David Davis called on Premier Jacinta Allen to explain the decision.
In this case, it was not a health-based scientific decision. It was a whim of one man.
The Victorian government has released a statement saying they did what was necessary to protect Victorians. Leaders are desperately trying to win over Australian voters with political offerings a day before early voting opens, with millions of people set to cast their ballots early. The Australian...
Are we going to go and voting this weekend, is it? Okay, whatever it is, the votes. I remember one guy, tennis player, Serbian tennis player, Malakovic, whatever his name, he didn't take the injection for the COVID and didn't play the games or whatever it was at the Australian Open. I don't know, some people have different opinion on why do we have coronavirus and why don't we prosecute or take China to international court or something. You know what I mean? I just don't see the point of no return. Once you start a bombing too many times, maybe it's overdue for you to stop the bombing and help out to create them to have better army, better place, better united, like Chile, united, help each other in earthquakes, tsunamis, whatever. Anyway.
Millions of people set to cast their ballots early. The Australian Electoral Commission is preparing to deliver what it calls Australia's largest peacetime logistical event, with more than 18 million people registered to vote and 60 million ballot papers being printed. The Easter long weekend traditionally represents a pause in the election campaign, but there have still been announcements. Over the long weekend, Labor promised to legislate penalty rate protections in a move branded a stunt by the coalition. Later today, the coalition is set to outline law and orders initiatives in a $750 million package it is calling Operation Safer Communities. To sport now, and star sprinters Gout and Lachlan Kennedy will both face challenging runs in the semi-finals if they're to keep their store gift dreams alive. The semis and finals will be contested today in Victoria, with the winner of the 120-metre event taking home a prize of $40,000. Lachlan Kennedy has been drawn in the first semi, where his biggest challengers are likely 17-year-old Dash Moir and Jacob Despard. Superstar Gout will race in the sixth and last semi-final, where his biggest challenge is set to be John Evans, who clocked the fastest heat time of 12.13 seconds. The semi-finals kick off from noon Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the women's final at 1:45 p.m. and the men's final at 2:20 p.m. And that's the latest from the SBS Newsroom.
Australia is not fast, or the 400 meters, 800 meters, 1,200 meters. I don't know. In longer runs, maybe, but in shorter system, we're hopefully coming third. We're going to come third one day. We're not the best. No, we can't run. No, we're not that good. We come fifth. I remember the other day we came fifth. But it was good. Oh, whatever. Australia's not fast on 400 meters freestyle, 400, 800. Well, we'll see in the future. Whoa, what's this census here? Washington Sea Reserve Ancient Language.
SBS.
A deacon and youth Salam Kiddush.
You're listening to SBS News.
During hours-long worship services, the Jia's language reverberates throughout the Riyaz Adbarat Debre Salam Kiddush Marian Church. Congregants prostrate themselves and bow when a priest walks among them, swinging a censer burning incense. Beza Bilalegne is a deacon and youth ministry leader at the church.
The sign of the smoke rising is our prayers also rising. So there's a lot of meaning if we were to dissect each and everything done here within the Ethiopian Orthodox Church.
Abraham Habte Selassie is a keses or priest at the church. Abraham says there's keen interest in preserving Jias and other traditions of the faith for future generations in the bustling DC area, which is home to the largest Ethiopian diaspora community in the United States.
Our tradition is ancient. It comes from apostolic times, and we believe in holy tradition. We have the Bible, we also have the holy tradition, but the two are not separate.
To reach young people and new converts, DSK Mariam offers services in Amharic and English. They also display translations in both languages on large TV screens during service. And there are other modern touches. At the end of the service, church members record a video of an elder chanting a liturgy passed on from his ancestors, with the footage posted on the church's YouTube channel to preserve it for future generations in hopes they maintain the tradition.
These kids, if they learn the tradition, the language, and also the faith, of course, the religion, if they do that, they can balance. Life here is very hectic, and also it's geared towards material profit. But the tradition concentrates on, focuses on spiritual development.
The church was founded in Washington, D.C. in 1987. It now has more than 1,500 registered members, and church leaders say more than 4,000 people attend services each week. 21-year-old Kanazegalila Mezgabu is a senior at Morgan State University in Baltimore and one of the congregation's members.
When I'm here, it's full of Ethiopians and full of people that are very welcoming because that's how we Ethiopians are. But when I'm here in this church, that's how it really feels, and it really feels like home.
Beza Bilalegne says symbolism is woven throughout their faith practice.
When we first
Ethiopian, you have to look for Hector. Ethiopian, here, like here, Ethiopian religion news. Why not, bro? Why not?
Ethiopians celebrate Easter with calls for charity and peace, AP News. Updated hour, minute, AM, PM time zone, month, full day, year updated 10:23 p.m. AEST, April 20th, 2025. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, AP, Ethiopians mark Easter festivities and day with vows to embrace sacrifice, love and peace in a country facing armed conflict and other challenges. During Fasika, as Easter is known, Christians of all denominations, including the majority Orthodox group, come together to celebrate Jesus Christ's death and resurrection. For some Ethiopians, religious festivals in recent months have acquired more meaning with the conflict in the Amhara region and instability in neighboring Tigray, where a deadly war ended with a peace deal in 2022. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said in a statement that it takes patience, humility, and sacrifice to achieve dialogue and reconciliation to heal a nation. At the cathedral known as Madane Alam in the capital Addis Ababa, mammoth congregations took part in services marked by acts of devotion, including kneeling and prostration. The public rituals attest to the Passion of Christ. The presiding priest, Lulad Baru, urged the faithful to reflect on the meaning of the sacrifice made by Jesus. Ethiopians ought to believe, understanding for whom Jesus Christ died for on the cross at Calvary, he said. Across Addis Ababa, lengthy church services were followed by feasts to mark the end of a 55-day fasting period. Fitsum Getachew, a casual laborer in the city, waited hours to be served food at Madane Alam, joining hundreds of worshippers in the meal that included traditional raw meat. At this feast prepared by our devout mothers, we have partaken of all things, even chunks of raw meat, and we are giving thanks unto God, he said. For church fundraisers and volunteers like Molyambit Jember, charity is the enduring spirit of Fasika. The poor will be looked after, she said. ______. For more on Africa and development, https://ipnews.com/hub/africapulse. ______. The Associated Press receives financial support for global health and development coverage in Africa from the Gates Foundation. The AP is solely responsible for all content. Find standards for working with philanthropies, a list of supporters and funded coverage areas audup.org. Ethiopia, AP News. The Associated Press is an independent global news organization dedicated to factual reporting. Founded in 1846, AP today remains the most trusted services vital to the news business. More than half the world's population sees AP journalism every day.
Oh, doesn't it? No, amigo. No, amigo. No, 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 no. No, no, no. No, you won't read because it's got the photos in the middle, amigo. Se puede.
Ethiopian Orthodox Church in Washington preserves ancient traditions, AP News. Washington, AP in the U.S. Capitol, hundreds of Ethiopians dressed in traditional white shawls chant in the ancient liturgical language of one of the oldest branches of Christianity. During horse-long worship services, the Jez language reverberates throughout Disk Mariam Church.
God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. On the name of God, on the name of God, on the name of God, oh God, oh God, oh God, 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 God. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. On the name of God and Jesus Christ that died on the cross. The Son of God, yeah.
Congregants prostrate themselves in reverence to God and bow when a priest walks among them swinging a censer burning incense. Worshippers kiss the Holy Gospel during service at Reizat Barat Deborah Salam Kidist Mariam Church.
Okay, get out. We're going to have 1,000. This is a religion of Ethiopia, isn't it?
Religion in Ethiopia, Wikipedia, consists of a number of faiths. Among these mainly Abrahamic religions, the most numerous is Christianity, Ethiopian Orthodoxy, Pente, Roman Catholic, whose adherents collectively form 67.3% of the population, followed by Islam, adhered to by 31.3%. There is also a long-standing but small Ethiopian Jewish community. Some adherents of the Baha'i faith likewise exist in a number of urban and rural areas. Additionally, there is also a substantial population of the adherents of traditional faiths. According to the national census conducted in 2007, over 32 million people or 43.5% were reported to be Ethiopian Orthodox Christians. Over 25 million or 33.9% were reported to be Muslim, 13.7 million or 18.6% were Pente Christians. And just under 2 million or 2.6% adhere to traditional beliefs too. Neither in the 2007 census, nor in the 1994 census were responses reported in further detail. For example, those who identified themselves as Hindus, Jewish, Baha'i, agnostics or atheists were counted as other. The Kingdom of Aksum in present-day Ethiopia and Eritrea was one of the first Christian countries in the world, having officially adopted Christianity as the state religion in the 4th century. The Ethiopian Empire was the only region of Africa to survive the expansion of Islam as a Christian state before European colonization. For this section needs expansion. You can help by adding to it. November 2023. In general, most of the Christians, largely members of Then and Chalcedonian Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, live in the highlands, while Muslims and adherents of traditional African religions tend to inhabit more lowland regions in the east and south of the country. Citation needed. The numerous indigenous African religions in Ethiopia operate mainly in the far southwest and western borderlands. Ethiopia has close historical ties to all three of the world's major Abrahamic religions. Christians form the majority of the population. Islam is the second most followed religion, with 31.3% of the population being adherents. 2.6% of the population, mainly in the far south and southwest, follow traditional religions, other religions, the Baha'i faith, Judaism, etc. Make up the remaining 0.6%. Ethiopia is the site of the first Hijrain Islamic history and the oldest Muslim settlement in Africa at Nagash. Until the 1980s, a substantial population of Ethiopian Jews resided in Ethiopia. The country is also the spiritual homeland of the Rastafari religious movement. Citation needed. Ethiopia is one of the oldest Christian states in the world. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church is an Oriental Orthodox Church, which is the largest Christian denomination in Ethiopia. It was part of the Coptic Orthodox Church until 1959, and is the only pre-colonial Orthodox Church in sub-Saharan Africa. The Apostolist Math was said to have died in Ethiopia. 5 Christianity in Ethiopia dates back to the Aksumite kingdom during King Ezana's reign. 6. In 2016, the government stated that 67% of the country is Christian, 44% of the population belonging to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. 7. According to the government's 1994 census, which the World Factbook follows, 61.6% of the Ethiopian population was Christian, 50.6% of the total were Ethiopian Orthodox, 10.1% were various Protestant denominations, such as the Lutheran Ethiopian Evangelical Church Makan Yesus. Androman Catholics constituted 0.9% of the population. 8. Orthodox Ethiopian Christians are predominant in Tigray 95.6% and Amhara 82.5%, while the majority of Protestants live in southern nations. Nationalities and Peoples Region are SNNPR, 55.5% of the inhabitants, and the Oromia region 4.8 million or 17.7% too. According to the government's most recent census from 2007, Christians constitute 62.8% of the total population, with the largest group being Ethiopian Orthodox Christians at 43.5%. followed by Protestants 18.6% and Catholics at 0.7%. A 2015 study estimates some 400,000 Christian believers from a Muslim background in the country, most of them belonging to some form of Protestantism. 9. The Kingdom of Ixum was one of the first nations to officially accept Christianity when St. Frumentius Softare, called Fremnatos or Abba Salama, Father of Peace, in Ethiopia, converted Kinshasa during the 4th century AD 1011. Many believe that the gospel had entered Ethiopia even earlier, with the royal official described as being baptized by Philip the Evangelist in chapter 8 of the Acts of the Apostles, Acts 8:26-39-12. Orthodox Christianity has a long history in Ethiopia dating back to the 1st century, and is dominant in northern and central Ethiopia. Both Orthodox and Protestant Christianity have large representations in southern and western Ethiopia. A small ancient group of Thebata Israel live in northwestern Ethiopia, though most emigrated to Israel in the last decades of the 20th century as part of the rescue missions undertaken by the Israeli government, Operation Moses and Operation Solomon 13. Some Israeli and Jewish scholars consider these Ethiopian Jews as a historic close tribe of Israel. Today, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, part of Oriental Orthodoxy, is by far the largest denomination, though a number of Protestant churches have recently gained ground. Since the 18th century, there has existed a relatively small, uniate Ethiopian Catholic Church in full communion with Rome, with adherents making up less than 1% of the total population. 2. The name Ethiopia, Hebrew Kush, is mentioned in the Bible numerous times, 37 times in the King James Version. Abyssinia is also mentioned in the Quran and Hadith. While many Ethiopians claim that the Bible references of Kush apply to their own ancient civilization, pointing out that the Aegean River, a name for Thenel, is said to flow through the land. Some scholars believe that the use of the term referred to the Kingdom of Kush in particular, or Africa outside of Egypt in general. The modern name Ethiopia is from the Greek term Ethiopios to translate Kush, and was applied to all of sub-Saharan Africa, including what is now Sudan, but with a few classical geographers giving more detailed descriptions of present-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, e.g. Adulis, as well. Citation needed. Islam in Ethiopia dates back to the founding of the religion, in 615, when a group of Muslims were counseled by Muhammad to escape persecution in and travel to Ethiopia via modern-day Eritrea, which was ruled by Ashima ibn Abjar, a pious Christian king. Bilal ibn Riba, the first muezzin, the person chosen to call the faithful to prayer, and one of the foremost companions of Muhammad, was born in Mecca to an Abyssinian mother. Moreover, the largest portion of non-Arab companions of Muhammad belonged to Ethiopian ethnic group. Citation needed. According to the most recent 2007 CISA governmental data, Muslims are 33.9% of the population, up from 32.8% in 1994 according to the census data of that year 814 before the publication of the 2007 census results. However, the U.S. State Department estimated that approximately 31% of the population is Sunni Muslim. 7. Roughly 68% of Ethiopian Muslims are Sunni, whilst 23% are Renan denominational Muslims, whilst another 2% adhere to other sects such as Shia, Quranist, Ibadiyatsi 15, and some belonging to various Sufi orders. Islam first arrived in Ethiopia in 614 with the first migration to Abyssinia. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia's capital city, is home to about 443,821 Muslims, or 16.2%. 16. While Muslims can be found in almost every community, Islam is most prevalent in Somali 98.4%, Afar 95.3%, and Oromia 47.5% regions. 2. Haile Selassie's government reportedly concealed the actual figures of the Muslim population in order to present Ethiopia as a Christian nation to the outside world. 17. The writers of Ethiopia, a country study, claimed that Islam made up 50% of the total population in 1991 based on the 1984 census commissioned by Theodor Gregime. 17. Some web columnists even say the Muslim population are the majority and disagree with the current Ethiopian government's claims. 18. Thebata Israel, also known as Thephalicious, though this term is considered derogatory, are a long isolated group of African Jews who have lived in Ethiopia since antiquity. Their existence was not widely known to the outside world for many years, and they likewise were not aware of other Jewish groups outside of their own community. 19. They became known to West during the 19th and 20th centuries, and were accepted as Jews by the Israeli government in 1975. After this, Operation Moses and Operation Solomon, conducted in 1984 and 1991, respectively, airlifted the vast majority of the Ethiopian Jewish population to Israel, where there is currently a population of 150,000 Beta Israel. A small Jewish community still exists in Ethiopia, although it is mostly composed of Lashmora, Ethiopian Jews who converted to Christianity in the past, and as such have not been recognized as Jews by the State of Israel, but have returned to Judaism. The Falashmora now number some 22,000. The Baha'i faith in Ethiopia begins after Abdul Baha wrote letters encouraging taking the religion to Africa in 1916. Mr. Sabri Alays, then a 27-year-old Baha'i from Alexandria, Egypt, introduced the Baha'i faith to Ethiopia in 1933. 21 a year later, in November 1934. The first Baha'i local spiritual assembly in the country was formed in Addis Ababa. 22 in 1962. Ethiopia Baha is elected a national spiritual assembly. 23 by 1963. There were 7 localities with smaller groups of Baha'is in the country. 24th The Association of Religion Data Archives estimated that there were around 23,000 Baha'i adherents in 2010-25. The Ethiopian community celebrated its Diamond Jubile in January 2009. 26 As of 2016 update, the largest Baha'i community is in Addis Ababa. 27 A number of towns, such as Awassa, Nazareth, Mekelle, Sukarno and Shashmani, and rural areas in Oromia and the southern nations. Nationalities and Peoples Region SNNPR have active and growing Baha'i communities. Citation needed. An estimated 2.6% of Ethiopia's population adheres to various traditional faiths, according to the 2007 census, down from 4.6% in the 1994 census data. The largest numbers of practitioners of traditional religions are in the SNNPR, about 993,000 people, and Oromia, 895,002. Views on the emperor seated. Ethiopia is the spiritual homeland of the Rastafari movement, whose adherents believe Ethiopia is sin. The Rastafari view Emperor Haile Selassie Isis, the human incarnation of God. The emperor himself was the defender of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. That also has a concept of Zion, although it represents a unique and complex concept, referring figuratively to St. Mary. The Rastafari view Emperor Haile Selassie Isis, the human incarnation of God. The emperor himself was the defender of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. That also has a concept of Zion, although it represents a unique and complex concept, referring figuratively to St. Mary, but also to Ethiopia as a bastion of Christianity surrounded by Muslims and other religions. Much like Mount Zion in the Bible citation needed, it is also used to refer to Tokshem, the ancient capital and religious center of Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, or to its primary church, Cal Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. 28 Full citation needed. In 2023, the country was scored 1 out of 4 for religious freedom. Local conflicts have included violence along religious lines. 29. In the same year, it was ranked as the 39th worst country in the world to be a Christian. 30. Religious politics and tension seated. Freedom of religion is provided by the Constitution of 1995, and freedom of worship had also been guaranteed by the 1930 and 1955 constitutions of Ethiopia. Although in certain localities this principle is not always respected in practice. There is no state religion, and it is forbidden to form political parties based upon religion. All religious groups are required to register with the government and renew their registration once every 3 years. It is a crime in Ethiopia to incite one religion against another. Ethiopian Orthodox to Ahado Church published works by an unknown author written in Ge'ez and translated to Amharic in 1986 which claim Ethiopia shall refrain from sexual intercourse with Oromo, Muslims, Shankala, Falash and animals because it was an abomination. 31 Discrimination against Muslims has been rampant since the creation of modern Ethiopia. Muslims were marginalized in the Haile Selassie era, which led to the 1974 Ethiopia.
Okay, you can come and get it at Wikipedia. No, Paul. You have to get here, time, say this week. We try this year, where they have war. This one, an Australian one, man. What the hell?
Power struggle leads to coup in Tigray as war looms between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Global development, The Guardian. Ergowi was building a tour guiding business when war struck Ethiopia's Tigray region in 2020. He spent the next 2 years fighting on the front line. Now he is among those who fear Tigray is on the brink of conflict once more. We don't want to become a battleground, but it seems like war is near, maybe even inevitable, he said. The war between Tigray's rebellious rulers and Ethiopia's federal government ended in 2022, leaving about 600,000 people dead and nearly 10% of women aged between 15 and 49 living in Tigray raped, according to a British medical journal study. But the failure to implement most of the ceasefire's provisions, including the return of nearly 1 million displaced people and a scramble over resources has split the ruling Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) party. Tensions escalated this month when Tigray's interim president, Getachew Reda, tried to fire 3 senior military commanders, having previously accused his forces of attempting a coup. A coup now appears to have taken place. Last week, a rival TPLF faction, led by the party chair Debretsion Gebremichael, installed its officials in provincial government offices. It also took over the mayor's office and the main radio station in the regional capital, Mekelle. Getachew fled to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia's capital. On Saturday, a skirmish in Tigray resulted in 3 deaths. A few days before, another person was killed during a dispute in the town of Adi Gaidam. All week long queues formed outside Tigray's banks as people withdrew their cash and flights out sold out. Armed men roamed Mekelle streets at night, checking people's ID. Fear and uncertainty prevail, said a resident who asked not to be named. My friends are planning to leave for Addis Ababa, Kenya and Uganda because of the fear of war. Against this backdrop, concerns are also increasing over tensions between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Despite fighting alongside each other in Tigray, the neighboring countries have been at loggerheads for months over the determination of Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, to regain access to the Red Sea, which Ethiopia lost when Eritrea seceded in 1993. Having previously made overtures to the breakaway Republic of Somaliland, Abiy set his sights on Eritrea's port of Asab. He has repeatedly said sea access was existential for Ethiopia, which with 130 million people is the world's most populous landlocked country. He described losing Eritrea's coastline as a historical mistake. Eritrea has ordered a nationwide mobilization and is trying to undermine Abiy by aiding rebels fighting Ethiopia's military in the Amhara region bordering Tigray. There are reports that Eritrean intelligence helped Debretsion's TPLF faction during last week's coup. Ethiopia has sent tanks and troops to the Eritrean border, and state media have been amplifying voices justifying Ethiopia's claims over Asab port. Last week, Jensitkin Gebretensky, Tigray's vice president, warned that war could erupt at any moment and the region risked becoming a battlefield again. Peyton Knopf and Alexander Rondos, the former US and EU special envoys to the region, described developments as dry tinder waiting for a match that could ignite an interstate war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Abiy said he wanted Ethiopia to regain the port peacefully. Ethiopia has no intention to invade Eritrea to gain Red Sea access, he said on Thursday. Our desire is to talk about it under the principle of give and take, in a mutually beneficial manner and according to commercial law. He spoke after meeting the rival Tigray factions. It appears Abiy declined to intervene in support of Getachew, which could have sparked fresh fighting. Abiy could seek a deal to secure the support of Tigray, which still has a formidable 200,000-strong military force. Tigray's new leaders, meanwhile, want to regain control of western Tigray, a fertile area with gold deposits that was seized by Amhara forces during the war. Any attempt to recapture it could also spark fresh conflict, said Ahmed Solomon at the geopolitical think tank Chatham House. The crux is how things evolve in Tigray and how Abiy responds, Solomon said. If there is no agreement, the situation could certainly escalate.
Okay. the fighting in Ethiopia, the fighting what you just heard. Let's try this month. Oh yeah, what we're looking for.
Trump lawsuit, Google search. 5 days ago, the lawsuit argues that President Trump lacks the authority to unilaterally impose tariffs against Mexico, China, and Canada or create an across-the-board 10%. 3 days ago, emergency lawsuit filed in federal court to again halt removals under the Alien Enemies Act for people within that court's judicial district. 5 days ago, defendant Donald J. Trump is the President of the United States. He is sued in his official capacity. 19. Defendant Kristi Noem is the Secretary of Homeland. 25 pages, 746 kilobyte. 5 days ago, with the state budget hanging precariously in the balance, Governor Gavin Newsom filed a lawsuit today to block President Donald Trump's tariff powers. The lawsuit. The lawsuit contends that President Trump lacks the authority to unilaterally impose the new levies. Trump's tariffs are unlawful, California Attorney General says amid states. CBS News. California has become the first state to sue the Trump administration over its sweeping tariffs. Details on California's lawsuit over Trump's tariffs. KPIX, CBS News Bay Area. 5 days ago, California's governor and attorney general sued President Trump on Wednesday to try to stop his flurry of tariffs, accusing the president of taking unlawful. 3 days ago, California this week became the first state to sue President Donald Trump over his so-called Liberation Day tariffs, claiming the president has no authority. 7 days ago, a group of small businesses sued President Donald Trump, seeking to block new tariffs that he has imposed on foreign imports.
Well, okay.
Litigation tracker, legal challenges to Trump administration actions. Immigration and citizenship. Executive action, Alien Enemies Act removals, Presidential Proclamation 10,903. GFF v. Trump SDNY. Case No. 125 CV-02886. Habeas petition and class complaint. Motion for TRO. April 8, 2025. Overview: plaintiffs are 2 Venezuelan nationals, proceeding under pseudonym, in immigration custody in New York. They have filed a habeas petition asking the court to stop the government from removing them from the United States, the Alien Enemies Act Presidential Proclamation, and to declare the proclamation unlawful. The case has been brought on behalf of themselves and a class of all other persons similarly situated, to include all non-citizens from Venezuela in immigration custody in the Southern District of New York, who were, are, or will be subject to the proclamation. The court has temporarily blocked the defendants from removing the plaintiffs and others similarly situated in the Southern District of New York through APR 23, 2025. Case summary: on March 15, 2025, President Donald Trump published a presidential proclamation titled Invocation of the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the United States by Tren de Aragua Proclamation, which sought to authorize removal of non-citizens from Venezuela who are deemed to be enemy aliens under the Alien Enemies Act, e. Petitioners are 2 Venezuelan men who have been arrested and detained by immigration authorities and allegedly face imminent deportation pursuant to the proclamation. Petitioners argue that the removal process established under the proclamation is unlawful. They argue that such process is ultra vires under the EE, as the EE only authorizes removals during a declared war or invasion of the United States by a foreign nation or government, and further requires additional process prior to removing non-citizens. They also argue that the removal process violates various provisions of the Immigration and Nationality Act and Foreign Affairs Reform and Restructuring Act, including those that establish procedures and mechanisms for, as well as protections against, removal, including sending someone to a country where they are more likely than not to face torture. Finally, they argue that the removal process violates the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment and the right to habeas corpus. Petitioners have brought their petition and complaint on behalf of a similarly situated class, including all non-citizens in immigration custody who were, are, or will be subject to the proclamation. Petitioners have requested that the court certify the class, grant a writ of habeas corpus to petitioners that enjoins defendants from removing them pursuant to the proclamation, and declare the proclamation unlawful. Update 1. Starting on April 8 to 11, the court certified the class and granted a temporary restraining order preventing their removal from the district or the United States. April 11, 2025. JAVV Trump SD Tex. Case number 125 CV-00072. Habeas petition April 9, 2025. Emergency motion for TRO April 9, 2025. April 9, 2025. Overview. Plaintiffs are 3 Venezuelan nationals proceeding under pseudonym in immigration custody in Texas. They have filed a habeas petition asking the court to stop the government from removing them from the United States the Alien Enemies Act presidential proclamation and to declare the proclamation unlawful. The case has been brought on behalf of themselves and a class of all other persons similarly situated, to include all non-citizens from Venezuela in immigration custody in the Southern District of Texas, who were, are, or will be subject to the proclamation. The court has temporarily blocked the defendants from removing the plaintiffs and others similarly situated in the Southern District of Texas through APR 23, 2025. Case summary. On March 15, 2025, President Donald Trump published a presidential proclamation titled Invocation of the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the United States by Tren de Aragua proclamation, which sought to authorize removal of non-citizens from Venezuela who are deemed to be enemy aliens under the Alien Enemies Act, e. Petitioners are 3 Venezuelan men who have been arrested and detained by immigration authorities at El Val Detention Center in Texas, and allegedly face imminent deportation pursuant to the proclamation. Petitioners argue that the removal process established under the proclamation is unlawful. They argue that such process is ultra vires under the EE, as the EE authorizes removals only during a declared war or invasion of the United States by a foreign nation or government, and further requires additional process prior to removing non-citizens. They also argue that the removal process violates various provisions of the Immigration and Nationality Act and Foreign Affairs Reform and Restructuring Act, including those that establish procedures and mechanisms for, as well as protections against, removal, including sending someone to a country where they are more likely than not to face torture. Finally, they argue that the removal process violates the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment and the right to habeas corpus. Petitioners have brought their petition and complaint on behalf of a similarly situated class, including all non-citizens in immigration custody in the Southern District of Texas who were, are, or will be subject to the proclamation. Petitioners have requested that the court certify the class, grant a writ of habeas corpus to petitioners that enjoins defendants from removing them pursuant to the proclamation and declare the proclamation unlawful. Petitioners filed an emergency application for a temporary restraining order, TRO, due to being in imminent danger of removal to another country. On April 9, 2025, Judge Fernando Rodriguez granted petitioners TRO on an ex parte basis and blocked respondents from transferring, relocating, or removing petitioners or any other person that respondents claim are subject to removal under the proclamation from the El Val Detention Center, and respondents are enjoined from transporting such persons outside of Willacy County or Cameron County, Texas, without an order from the court. Absent further action, the TRO will be in place through April 23, 2025. April 9, 2025. Zacharias Matos vs. Venegas SD Tex. Case number 125 CV-00057. Habeas petition. March 15, 2025. Overview. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, officers tried to remove Daniel Enrique Zacharias Matos, a Venezuelan national who is detained at the El Val detention facility, from the United States. Zacharias Matos filed a petition to prevent his removal from the U.S. unless and until he receives a final removal order. The government asserts that the Alien Enemies Act authorizes his removal. The court has issued a preliminary injunction and set a hearing to assess evidence of the government's claim that he is a member of the Venezuelan Tita gang. Summary. Daniel Enrique Zacharias Matos brought a habeas petition to prevent Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, officers from removing him from the United States unless and until he receives a final removal order. The government states that the Alien Enemies Act, 50 U.S.C. Section 21, authorizes his removal based on the March 15 presidential proclamation. ICE officials tried to remove Zacharias Matos, a Venezuelan national who is detained at the El Val detention facility, from the United States on Mar. 14, but they were allegedly unable to do so due to a problem with the flight. Zacharias Matos claims that the attempt to remove him violates 8 U.S.C. Section 1229 of the Immigration and Nationality Act and the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and ask the court to enjoin his imminent removal unless and until a removal order is entered against him. Update 1. On April 7th, Judge Fernando Rodriguez granted a preliminary injunction on set an evidentiary hearing for May 5th on whether the petitioner is a member of TITA. April 7th, 2025. DBU v. Trump D. Colo. Case number 125 CV-01163. Class petition for habeas. April 12, 2025. Overview. On March 14th, President Donald Trump signed a presidential proclamation purporting to invoke the Alien Enemies Act to allow for removal of alleged members of the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua, TITA, gang. Plaintiffs filed a class action lawsuit arguing the act does not apply to these circumstances. In addition to constitutional and other statutory arguments, the court has provisionally issued a temporary block to any removals of plaintiffs and the class they represent. Summary. On March 14th, President Donald Trump signed a proclamation purporting to invoke the authority of the Alien Enemies Act to summarily deport Venezuelan nationals alleged to be members of the Tren de Aragua, TITA, gang. 2 Venezuelan nationals in U.S. immigration custody have brought a proposed class action on behalf of all non-citizens in custody in Colorado who are, were, or will be subject to the March 14th proclamation, along with a habeas petition. They allege that the preconditions of the Alien Enemies Act have not been met and that the proclamation is unlawful, that they have been denied the opportunity to voluntarily leave the U.S. in violation of the Alien Enemies Act, that the government has violated the Immigration and Naturalization Act and the Foreign Affairs and Reform and Restructuring Act, that they have been denied due process under the Fifth Amendment, and that they have been denied their right to habeas corpus. The plaintiff submitted an emergency application for a temporary restraining order asking the court to block any removals of plaintiffs and the class they represent from Colorado. Update 1. On April 14th, Judge Charlotte Sweeney temporarily blocked removal of the plaintiffs and the class they represent. April 14th, 2025. JGG v. Trump DDC. Case number 125 CV-00766. DC Cerno. 25 to 5067. Supreme Court Docket 24A 931. Petition. Motion for Tro. March 15, 2025. Overview. President Trump issued a presidential proclamation purporting to invoke the Alien Enemies Act to allow for summary removal of alleged members of the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua, TITA, gang. The White House publicly released the proclamation on the afternoon of March 15th. Plaintiffs filed a class action lawsuit arguing the 1798 statute does not apply to these circumstances, and the judge provisionally agreed, issuing a temporary block to any removals until further hearings. The Court of Appeals upheld the judge's ruling on appeal. The district court issued 2 temporary restraining orders, TROs, against the government on March 15th that have been extended through April 12th. Summary. On March 14th, President Trump signed a proclamation purporting to invoke the authority of the Alien Enemies Act to summarily deport Venezuelan nationals alleged to be members of the Tren de Aragua, TITA, gang. In the early hours of Saturday, March 15th, 5 Venezuelan nationals in U.S. immigration custody brought a proposed class action lawsuit challenging the government's action on the ground that the Alien Enemies Act does not provide authority for such removals, that the removals would be in violation of immigration statutes governing deportation proceedings and the Administrative Procedure Act. Government's action on the ground that the Alien Enemies Act does not provide authority for such removals, that the removals would be in violation of immigration statutes governing deportation proceedings and the Administrative Procedure Act, in addition to a violation of habeas corpus. The plaintiff submitted an emergency application for a temporary restraining order asking the court to block any removals from the United States. In an emergency hearing on March 15th, Chief Judge James Bosper, first ruling from the bench, certified a class of all non-citizens in U.S. custody who are subject to the March 15th, 2025 presidential proclamation and granted the request for a temporary restraining order to block removals of any class members from the United Update 1. The same day, March 15th, the government submitted an notice of appeal to the D.C. Circuit. The judge issued a verbal order in a ruling from the bench and a written TRO that evening. Update 2. On March 17th, defendants move to vacate the TRO. Update 3. On March 18th, Chief Judge James Boasberg issued a minute order requiring defendants to submit a declaration explaining what time the flights that left U.S. airspace prior to the filing of the TRO departed and landed, when the individuals aboard left U.S. custody, and the number of people aboard subject to the President's proclamation. Update 4 on March 19th, defendants filed a motion to stay Chief Judge Boasberg's March 18th minute order, arguing that they required more time to invoke the state secrets privilege, avoid disclosure of sensitive information, and prevent harm to foreign relations. Update 5 on March 19th, Chief Judge Boasberg issued an order permitting defendants an additional day to respond to the Mar. 18 order, but expressing skepticism about their stated intention to invoke the state secrets doctrine. Update 6 on March 19th, plaintiffs filed a motion in opposition to defendants' motion to vacate the TRO.
Wow, that's gonna read heaps too much. That's way too much. Way too much, bro.
Governor Newsom files lawsuit to end President Trump's tariffs, Governor of California. What you need to know: California today filed a lawsuit challenging President Trump's authority to unilaterally enact tariffs, which have created economic chaos, driven up prices, and harmed the state, families, and businesses. Sacramento Governor Gavin Newsom and California Attorney General Rob Bonta today filed a lawsuit in federal court challenging President Trump's use of emergency powers to enact broad sweeping tariffs that hurt states, consumers, and businesses. The lawsuit argues that President Trump lacks the authority to unilaterally impose tariffs through the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, creating immediate and irreparable harm to California, the largest economy, manufacturing, and agriculture state in the nation. These tariffs have disrupted supply chains, inflated costs for the state and Californians, and inflicted billions in damages on California's economy, the fifth largest in the world. President Trump's unlawful tariffs are wreaking chaos on California families, businesses, and our economy, driving up prices and threatening jobs. We're standing up for American families who can't afford to let the chaos continue. Governor Gavin Newsom. The president's chaotic and haphazard implementation of tariffs is not only deeply troubling, it's illegal. As the fifth largest economy in the world, California understands global trade policy is not just a game. Californians are bracing for fallout from the impact of the president's choices, from farmers in the Central Valley to small businesses in Sacramento and worried families at the kitchen table. This game the president is playing has very real consequences for Californians across our state. I am proud to go to bat alongside Governor Newsom to fight for California's vibrant economy, businesses, and residents. Attorney General Rob Bonta. The lawsuit, filed in the United States District Court for the Northern District of California, requests the court to declare the tariffs imposed by President Trump void and enjoin their implementation. The president lacks authority to enact unilateral tariffs. The lawsuit argues that President Trump lacks the authority to unilaterally impose tariffs against Mexico, China, and Canada or create an across-the-board 10% tariff. The president's use of the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, EPA, to enact tariffs is unlawful and unprecedented. The EPA gives the president authority to take certain actions if he declares a national emergency in response to a foreign national security, foreign policy, or economic threat. The law, which was enacted by Congress in 1977, specifies many different actions the president can take.
Okay. They're taking Trump for the tariff. This bit here, combine UPA with this bit here, President Trump, copy. I have 1,000 open now. Your stuff and oh, it was 3 of April. Was that late?
Latest on U.S. tariffs, Australian Government Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. What has changed? The U.S. has announced new tariffs on imports from Australia and trade partners globally. The U.S. has imposed a 10% baseline tariff which took effect from 12:01 a.m. on April 5, 2025 EDT, 3:01 p.m. Saturday, April 5 AEST. Most goods originating in Australia will be subject to this 10% tariff on import into the United States. In addition, other U.S. trading partners were to be subject to new reciprocal tariff rates, calculated individually and intended to take effect from April 9. However, on April 9, President Trump announced a 90-day temporary suspension of these additional tariffs for most countries. An additional reciprocal tariff rate of 125% will be levied on goods originating from the People's Republic of China, Hong Kong, and Macau. From April 10. This is in addition to other tariffs, including the 20% levied on goods originating from the People's Republic of China and Hong Kong. From March 4, the new tariffs will be paid by U.S. importers. The U.S. has exempted some goods from the new tariffs, including those that are already subject to 25% tariffs under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. Exemptions from the new 10% tariff include steel and aluminum articles that are already subject to national security sectoral tariffs of 25% under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. Automotive vehicles and parts that are already subject to national security sectoral tariffs of 25% under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, noting the tariffs on vehicle parts are to take effect by May 3, 2025. Timber and lumber articles and some derivatives, and copper products and some derivatives that are currently under investigation for possible tariffs under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. Semiconductors, certain critical minerals and select pharmaceutical products, which the Trump administration has identified for further consideration under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. Certain minerals not available in the U.S., energy products, coins and bullion. All articles that become subject to future tariffs under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. It is important to note that these exemptions may change as the United States moves to implement all articles that become subject to future tariffs under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. It is important to note that these exemptions may change as the United States moves to implement the tariff announcements of April 2, 2025 and undertakes investigations into the identified products. Implications for Australian exporters to the U.S. The Australian government is working to analyze the impacts of these announced U.S. trade measures on Australian trade, in particular for Australian exporters to the U.S. These impacts are likely to vary by sector and will affect individual exporters in different ways. Australian exporters should be aware of these changed requirements and seek independent advice. The Australian Trade and Investment Commission, Austrade, is able to provide more targeted information and advice to Australian business.
Okay, we can see that. We can see trade and investment. That. Copy. 1 million. Bobcast.
Listening to SBS on the Money with Ricardo Gonçalves.
Hi,
Hi everyone, this is your daily 10-minute business and finance news wrap for this Tuesday, the 15th of April 2025. The Australian share market enjoyed its second consecutive day of gains, the S&P ASX 200 up 0.2%. It means since the recent low, the index is now up 5.7% from last week. So is the market turning around? For that and more, I spoke with David Walsh from Sartor Advisory. So a second day of gains for the ASX in a row, up now 6% from its low last week. Is sentiment really turning?
Look, I think it's something of an exhale after some pretty uncertain conditions. We had some heightened fear and those fear levels have come down, but I would say that the uncertainty is still very high. When I look at the overnight markets or the markets offshore, like the internals, the volume was really low, even though we had a bit of a bounce. So I would say the uncertainty continues.
When you're looking at the market today, though, what's driving the gains?
Yeah, it continues to be the banks. The financial sector has been doing a lot of the lifting in recent times. We can see that CBA is leading the gainers. We're also seeing a bounce in CSL and some of the healthcare names. This is despite the continued uncertainty around the tariff headlines for pharmaceuticals. That's a bit of a counter trend bounce there, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens, post these announcements.
I guess that's a key thing that you've said there. What happens? There's all this uncertainty, right? Given all this uncertainty, how concerned are you as an investor about the outlook?
Yeah, I think there's a very wide range of outcomes for the economy and the market at the moment, as wide as I can remember. Over my career, and it's interesting, we're going through earnings season in international markets, and soon we'll come into earnings season in Australia. But for example, we've had an update from a Swedish industrial company, Hexagon, where they pre-announced to the market that their digital solutions business, think about sensors for automation and robotics, the digital solutions business just ground to a halt in the last 2 weeks of March. Also in Japan, we had an update yesterday from Takeuchi, which is a construction equipment company, more of the small size excavators and steer loaders. Their earnings were okay, but their order book has gone down by 40% year on year. So they're indicating that there's continued caution and uncertainty in Europe, in the US, and also in other markets. And then in the US, more globally, we had the LVMH gave their earnings last night, and their sales in their fashion and leather goods, which I thought was bottoming last quarter, has underperformed expectations, down year on year.
To turn that off, isn't this on?
Social media age laws. TikTok, Meta, Snapchat demand answers on government's YouTube favoritism. TikTok has led fellow social media giants Meta and Snapchat in demanding an explanation from Communications Minister Michelle Rowland over her favorable treatment for Google-owned YouTube, which is being exempted from world-leading social media age restriction laws. TikTok said the sweetheart deal undermined the integrity of the plans, but Rowland again refused to explain why YouTube's content was any less harmful to under 16s than that on other banned platforms. Google operates illegal ad monopoly, U.S. federal court judge rules. San Francisco Google has been branded an abusive monopolist by a federal judge for the second time in less than a year. This time for illegally exploiting some of its online marketing technology to boost the profits, fueling an internet empire currently worth sus $1.8 trillion. $2.8 trillion. The ruling issued on Thursday, Friday AEST, by a U.S. district judge in Virginia comes after a separate decision in August that concluded Google's namesake search engine has been illegally leveraging its dominance to stifle competition and innovation. AP.
All right. Sorry, mashup, mixed news. Mashup, mixed news. Oh, in the description or something? All right. See you later. Goodbye. All these issues. What are they talking about? Rewind. Love you. Bye. Bye.